live page. It looked.
Yeah, Facebook put through some major updates.
It's completely reformatted. I don't even know what to do with it since last week. So,
Yep.
Such fun stuff. Okay, we'll be up there very shortly. Sometimes it's just as simple as not recognizing what it is that you're looking at. Okay, we should be up. And we are. Okay, let me just do some quick sharing. Share to page. There goes our revolution. And options. Copy. Latino caucus. I'm going to go Latino caucus. Paste. Publish. Our Revolution National. Our Revolution National has been hit and miss about letting me post stuff there. Some of the shows have gone there, some of them haven't. I'm going to send this to your more options. Facebook. Next, friends timeline. Just sent it to your personal timeline. You should be able to find it very shortly. And then you can do with it what you wish. About a minute out from Hot 101. Oh, hey, there's the sound that I need to turn down. So I start reverbing on myself. Almost like I know what I'm doing. Comments.
Gotta get myself one of those professional microphones that you've got.
Well, there's comments. They reoriented that too.
Yep. Complete redesign of the website.
Oh, can't stand it. To blue. Sucking Democrats. Oh, stop doing that. Our future. Easton, folding chair, hub, Pennsylvania, indivisible, local, WCM, election integrity, New Allentown, flip, indivisible, P voter information. Oh, Facebook. Oh, Facebook. Now I don't remember where I was. Election integrity. Oh, I think I did a couple of these twice. Pennsylvania for the people. Town sub. Fracking. Valley. 2020. Bushkill. Grit. That. That one. I would really like to do those two groups. They won't allow it. On that one. Battleground, breakground. They won't let me. Okay. Yeah, they really, now I don't know how I can get to, you do not know if I can see comments. Hopefully I can. And I am going to, it's 5:02. You're going to hear me go. You're going to know when we're starting. Welcome, everyone. It is Oh, there's an ad playing in the back. Of course there is. Of course there is, because the background noise that I usually put on, they had to put an ad in the background. And yeah, you gotta, of course you do. Everything. Go, please let me skip you. Thank you so much. Okay, there we go. That's the little trick. There's an audio trick I have, folks, to keep the 101 computer busy. And of course, it had to do a little ad in front of it. Anyway, wow, what a great start. Hey, technology, we love you so very much. Anyway, welcome, everyone. Let's try that again. Hey, hit the reset button. Let's try that again. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so very much. It is the 4th of October, 2020, and this is the Kennedy Effect, live from my humble second bedroom in the Saucon Valley, part of the Lehigh Valley in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, part of these United States, on planet Earth, the only one we have. Third rock from the sun in the Terran solar system in this humble Milky Way galaxy. Welcome, one and all. We are back with you yet again live on this Sunday, this crisp fall Sunday evening. Actually get a beautiful day outside, clear, lovely. I hope you enjoyed your weekend as we wrap up another weekend here in the tumultuous United States of America. Let me say thank you and welcome to everyone who is here. We appreciate it very, very much. We are back yet again live with you. Thank you all for being here, each and every single one of you. Some interesting things in just literally the last 10 minutes. So, Facebook did an update that I knew about. Oh, hey, great. Oh, wonderful. I can see comments. That's awesome. Had no idea. All of the all the screens for Facebook look different. And that threw me for a loop because I did not know that all of my login screens for Facebook were going to look different. They all looked different. And that put us back by a couple of minutes. But I can see you on the group page. Let me get through that fun stuff. So listen, wherever you are with us, as you know, you are welcome. You are respected. We appreciate literally every single one of you. Wherever you are watching and listening on Facebook, at the over 50 different groups and pages and individuals who share the show, literally individual people who share the show, over 50 of you now. We appreciate it very, very much. Our Revolution National, Our Revolution Pennsylvania, and of course, hot101.net, the Easton Democratic Committee, the Bethlehem Democratic Committee, the I Thrive community, Back to Blue PA, Project Battleground PA, the Hub for Progress, my friend Jordy, everywhere, all the pages. I can't even name all 50 of them because my brain just doesn't work that great all the time. We thank you. We appreciate it very, very much. The Pennsylvania Latino Caucus, by the way, everyone that shares and allows me to place the show on their, little parking pad on Facebook. We appreciate it very, very much. And thank you so much. It is our home base, the home group page for the Kennedy Effect, where I will see your name, welcome you, and see your comments on what is now a newly reformed page, which looks different. And I can't say that I like it because the space where I get to type in is a lot smaller. And I imagine after about 2 or 3 words, I will lose track of what the heck I'm typing in there. And who knows what it's going to look like by the time I'm done typing, because I tend to be rather wordy, as you well know, because I'm in the middle of one of those wordy rants as we speak. My guest is kindly and patiently waiting for me to shut the heck up and get to him. My friends and family at hot101.net, welcome yet again. Welcome and thank you for allowing us onto your devices, your smart speakers, in your cars, in your kitchens, your bedrooms, your living rooms, wherever it is that you are listening to us. Thank you yet again for welcoming us. If you do not yet know how to listen to Hot 101, and oh, by the way, go to the main website at hot101.net. It has been redesigned. It is exceptionally easy to use. It is very clear, very colorful, exceptionally easy to use. You get to see everyone who is a part of the hot101.net family. all of the DJs, all the family there. Contact, there's information, there's COVID information there on how to keep yourself safe, information that you need to know. You want to check out the new hot101.net main Facebook page, completely redesigned. Check it out. Very easy to navigate, exceptionally easy to navigate. So check it out, and you can listen to the Kennedy Effect there. So if you have not visited the main website page for hot101.net, I strongly encourage you to do so. That is one way to listen to the program. You can also find the apps for hot101.net at the Apple App Store if you have an Apple device. If you have an Android device, you can go to the Google Play Store. Or if you happen to have the TuneIn Radio app, you can go there and just search for hot101.net. You can also listen to hot101.net through Facebook as well. We share the show there. You can watch and listen. There is a Facebook page for hot101.net as well. If you want to advertise your business, your product, your service, yourself, whatever, anything that you want to get out to the world, this is a place that you can do it right here at the Kennedy Effect. You can have me in a much more controlled and professional way, other than the little bit of chaos that we have had here tonight. We can read that advertisement for you. Contact the show for anything that you may want to inquire about. We have an email set up just for the program. It is thatotherkennedy@gmail.com. There goes the voice. What else could happen tonight? Maybe I'll have a roof collapse or something, or the power will go out. I probably shouldn't say that out loud because it'll probably happen. Thatotherkennedy@gmail.com. Thatotherkennedy@gmail.com. I really should probably be careful what I wish for, because it's probably going to happen tonight. We start the program early every week. My guests are always very, very kind to come in or before 5 o'clock, just in case there are gremlins. And darn it, aren't there gremlins every week? And they have happened yet again. This Facebook redesign was a lovely thing, and it sure got me. So we're recovering. I'm mentally recovering from that. I seem to be a bit scattered by it, and I don't know why I should be so scattered. But what better way to get myself unscattered and get back on track here than to introduce this week's live guest. And that would be a face that, if you are familiar, a regular watcher and viewer of the program, he will look familiar to you. His rock star good looks, his leading man movie good looks. He is back again with us for a second time. He visited us the first time, not so much in a partial political candidate capacity, but more so in a human being entering the world of politics capacity. Tonight, it is much more in a candidate's capacity, in a political policy legislative capacity, and that is Graham Gonzales. He is the Democratic nominee and candidate for the Pennsylvania State House of Representatives from the 5th District. I believe I have that correct because I Googled you. Yep. I have that correct. And so, Graham, welcome back to the program.
Thanks, Jeff. Great to be here. Thanks for the introduction. Like you said, I'm really appreciative of you bringing me back on the program. Had a great time last time. I really enjoy being on and being able to discuss my issues. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Graham Gonzales. I'm the candidate for the State House of Representatives of Pennsylvania for the 5th District. Born and raised in Berks County, was born in the Reading Hospital, raised in Berks County, graduated from Berks Catholic, a lifelong member of St. Ignatius Loyola Parish. I came back from college and I saw that our current representative was not addressing the needs of our district. He wasn't seeing any of the pain points, and he's basically a retirement candidate. He basically sits around collecting his pension during a pandemic while people are losing their jobs and their pensions. And so seeing a man like that line up behind just as party leaders, he's basically a yes man. He doesn't legislate. He's not addressing the pain points of our district. The man himself has lined up behind President Trump and basically saying that he stands for white nationalists, racism, sexual assault against women, and violence in the streets. That was something that I couldn't stand and abide by, and seeing somebody who would erode away at our institutions. So I decided to come in and put myself up and say, you know, I'm not necessarily just the Democratic candidate. I'm the people's candidate for office. I'm not somebody who's going to legislate and just sit there and say, yes, I'm going to say yes to every Democratic party platform. I'm going to legislate for the pain points and the things that matter most to our community, which I don't think our current representative is doing.
It's not we covered a bit of this on your original appearance on the program, and we are going to have to recover some other ground for some folks who may not have seen you in your first appearance.
Yep.
And you did mention some of that in your opening, but let me just backtrack and let's start a little bit and see if we can recover some of that ground. Who is Graham Gonzales, and why are you here? And you did cover a bit of it, but who are you? What brings you here? How did you get to this point?
Yep, I'm just a regular guy who grew up in Berks County. Like I said, a lifelong member of St. Ignatius Loyola Parish, graduated from Berks Catholic, went off to college in Rhode Island and obtained a degree in economics and political science. For the past several years, I've been a consultant, but after going to college and coming back and working here and seeing what's happening in our county, seeing the pain that people feel, seeing that there's people without health care, especially right now, the pain points are being extremely hurtful for average Pennsylvanians during the pandemic, where people losing their jobs, they're losing their pensions. And then for me to sit there and watch a representative who does nothing, he sits basically back on his farm, goes hunting and doesn't legislate, doesn't, go out and see the people who are actually affected by this. And while he can sit back and receive a pension while people are losing their jobs and their pensions, is not something I could sit idly by and say, that's fine. That's somebody who should represent us. This wasn't something that I planned 1,000 years in the future. This was just something I came back, I saw somebody who wasn't representing our community, and I thought, if nobody's going to stand up to him, then I think I need to, because I know I can do a better job. And to be fair, he set the bar pretty low.
There has been a reoccurring theme through nearly every guest that I've had the honor of welcoming here, and the good folks who have taken time out of their Sundays from when we started in April all the way up until now, including my Republican good friend and guest, Robert Smith, who have said that there seems to be a rather large group of folks in Harrisburg, sadly some from both parties, who are happy to sit in the seat, occupy the office, but don't do a heck of a lot. They push, somebody walks past the seat, whether it's in front or behind, and either flat out tells them what button to push or whispers in their ear, which I think might be a bit more dangerous, actually, and tells them what button to push. And whether they have an envelope in their hands when they do it, is perhaps another topic of discussion. How much of that prompted you to take this step?
Oh, that absolutely goes hand in hand with why I chose to take this step. I mean, I grew up in a generation that watched the people in power accept checks on, the Senate floor, the House of Representatives floor for their campaigns. And there were checks from companies for the legislation they were voting on that would directly affect those companies. I grew up, with the Supreme Court allowing that money in politics. I grew up with flooding of cash into politics. My opponent is very well funded. He accepts money from corporations. I only accept money from either self-funded or small donors. I don't believe that anybody should have a say except for the people themselves. So I'm not going to have a corporation, I'm not going to have party leaders tell me this is what you need to vote for, because they're not the ones funding me. They're not the ones who are putting me into power. And they're not going to be the ones that I represent. The people I represent are the 60,000 people in District 5 of Berks County. These are the people who I'm going to be legislating for. These are the people who I'm going to be getting feedback from. And these are the people who I'm going to be representing. I don't represent corporations. I don't represent special interests. And I don't represent the leaders of the Democratic Party. I represent the people. And while I am a Democrat and I do side with many of the positions that our party holds, it's not like somebody is going to come walk by me and whisper in my ear and say, you need to vote on this. I'll say, I'll take it under consideration. I'll see if it works for our district, but it's not a yes or no situation. It's a situation where I need to evaluate every scenario. And if it works for our district, then I'll vote on it. If I see that there's a pain that's not being addressed, I'll put through legislation myself that will address those pain points for our district. But I'll never sit by and just say yes because somebody's funding me, because I don't accept those funds from those people like my opponent does, and he is a yes man for the Republican Party. And like you said, it does occur on both sides of the aisle. Money floods through both parties, and I don't believe that it should. I agree that we should push money out of politics. It should be very much so about the people, about their issues, and too often they're silenced because the people whose issues matter most are the people who are weakest, the ones who don't have the funds that they can just throw at candidates to tell them to legislate for them. And unfortunately, that's the scenario that we have in our country at the moment.
Do you happen to know from the last filings that were done just how much you're being outspent by?
I do not believe I know how much I'm being outspent by my candidate, but I do know that he actually hasn't even had to raise too much from his last campaigns because he had so much of a treasure chest from corporations donating in his previous campaigns that I think coming in, he had like hundreds of thousands of dollars just waiting in a chest. Meanwhile, I'm starting from scratch, getting, $15 small donations from people, using my own savings to fund my candidacy because I believe in the issues that I'm putting forward. I believe in the people of our district, and I believe that I shouldn't be a spokesman or a puppet for other people.
Do you happen to know how many pieces of legislation your opponent has directly sponsored?
I don't know the exact number, but I know in every session it's only several, and it's very much so him just jumping on the co-sponsor. And honestly, during the pandemic, when you should be putting through loads of legislation, one of the most notable things he's gone on to do is co-sponsor a bill to impeach Governor Wolf. So right now, when he should be focusing on the people who are losing their jobs, losing their pensions, he's collecting his own pension and trying to impeach the governor who's trying to keep people safe, keep the state locked down, listen to public health officials, and push us forward to prosperity. And instead of legislating and saying, okay, we need to invest back in the people, we need to, get Pennsylvania back to work, he's saying, let me not push through any real legislation. Let me try and impeach the governor and play politics at a time when people are dying and losing their jobs and their pensions.
And if I might take the time, folks who are listening and watching, a quick little civics lesson, if we might. We're talking about a legislator, not just on your state level or even local level, county and local level for that matter, and the national level. When you're talking about someone who is sponsoring a piece of legislation, you're talking about the architect of that legislation, the primary author of that legislation. A co-sponsor is, generally speaking, someone who is just, hey, do you want to sign on to this? I've already written it, done the. Graham may be the sponsor of a piece of legislation. He's done the research, he's done the wording, the writing, the crafting, all of the heavy lifting, so to speak, of a piece of legislation. He's now takes that bill around the offices of the legislative offices of different representatives looking for support. He comes to me, I read it, and asks me to be a quote unquote co-sponsor. I didn't do anything about it. I didn't write it. I didn't craft it. I didn't help him with it. I might offer a suggestion here or there, but I didn't really do any of the heavy lifting, any of the real down in the dirt, digging, researching, wording, all the way down to the commas and the periods and the dotting and the I's and crossing of the T's. Graham did all that. But he asks me to be a co-sponsor and lend my name in support of that legislation. When Graham talks about his opponent having not sponsored, been the primary sponsor, or we could use the word to make an analogy, you can use the word author, to be the primary sponsor. His opponent has not been the primary sponsor of any legislation. That's what we're talking about. He has not been the primary author, the originator, the generator of any legislation. He's simply thrown his name on some other legislation as a a name of support. I think my co-host has just entered the studio, one of my cats. You might hear her pretty soon. But so that's what we're talking about. And this is what we're talking about when we talk about a sadly large number of folks going to Harrisburg, the state capital of Pennsylvania, for those of you who are not from the Commonwealth, going there. And this is what we talk about when we talk about occupying the seat, holding the office, wearing the title, as it were, as opposed to actually doing the job function of the office. Would you say that you have the fancy political science degree there, sir? Would you say that that's a pretty good encapsulation of what we're talking about?
Yeah, I think that's a great analogy and a very great description. And it's also a great description of what's occurring in Harrisburg. A lot of people, and I'll be frank, on both sides of the aisle, go into office and then they basically become yes men for their party's leaders. They have corporations write legislation and then they just vote for it, and they don't ever give back to the communities. They don't even come back and listen to the communities. They take votes for granted, and then they just sit there and vote yes or no on bills that they didn't write. And so it's basically they're not doing their job. And for the people who don't know, in the state of Pennsylvania, people in our government, it's not like other states where you don't really get paid. It's almost really like a charity job. You get paid a full salary in the state of Pennsylvania and are given a car by the government. You are fully funded by the government, and this is supposed to be your sole job. You're not supposed to have other sources of outside income. This is supposed to be your sole job to serve the public, and these people don't even do that. Given a $90,000 plus salary and a car by the government to cover all their needs, they still don't go in and legislate. They still just come in and vote yes or no on bills that are written by other people.
And health coverage.
Yep, that too.
Which is, well, it's no small thing in these times. That's no small thing in these. I mean, it's no small thing anytime for someone like me who suffers a myriad of health problems, which, no one tunes in to hear about my health problems. So I'm not going to get into that, but I'm simply saying I've got a bunch. And in normal times, that's no small potato, having good health coverage or health insurance, supposed health insurance, that actually pays for things. What a novel concept, a health coverage that actually pays for things. These folks have excellent health coverage. I mean, proper, actual, real health coverage that actually, actually pays for things. I believe Pennsylvania's legislature is the best, or at least among the best paid legislative bodies in the country. It is the largest legislative body in the country, and I believe the health benefits are part of that. I would love if you feel free to correct me if I'm wrong.
Nope, you're correct. We rank among the best in terms of, it's like us, California, and New York, that get those kind of benefits, that kind of pay, and those kind of perks. And so, to have all that occur and then to have our legislators still go in and not push the legislation at a time when people don't have health care in the middle of a global pandemic. And they don't care, quite frankly, because they have it. And they're thinking, I'm covered. My job is secure for now. I know I'm going to try and get these votes. And they take, their districts for granted. They take their votes for granted. I know my opponent hasn't been out reaching out to people because he takes the votes in our district for granted. He thinks, people are going to line up behind me the same way he lines up behind Trump. He thinks that, everybody in the district is just going to follow him blindly. And that's not the case. People are not going to vote for him if he doesn't take care of them. And he's not legislating for them. He's not making sure that they receive health coverage. And by the way, the fact that he thinks that it's fine for us to, have people who aren't covered is absolutely absurd to me. Healthcare is a human right. If you're born and you're alive, you deserve healthcare coverage. As somebody who was raised Catholic and is still very prideful of my faith, I believe that we need to take care of everybody. We're stewards of the earth. We're stewards of our communities. We're our brother's keeper. We need to make sure that every single person is covered, safe, and healthy. And now more than ever, in the middle of a pandemic, we need to push through that legislation immediately.
It would seem to me, I'm intentionally asking you this as we come to the bottom of the hour. As you know, I always reset the program at the top and bottom of every hour. I'm doing this very intentionally before a reset because I do not want to go down this rabbit hole. But it would seem to me healthcare is very much a pro-life issue, is it not? It is to me.
I think it is very much so. I think something the Catholic Church often describes is that we live in a culture of death. They think, and this is one of those issues. Think about it: the death penalty. It shouldn't be there. We have prisons that can hold people, and prisons should be about rehabilitating people, not putting people to death. That's a barbaric act. An equally barbaric act is allowing our neighbors to walk around without healthcare coverage, because it's very similar in the sense that you're allowing somebody to die, even though you're not directly putting them to death. When you could put through a bill that would give them health coverage, which would prevent them from dying, when you refuse to do that, you're allowing them to die. And that's what our representatives and my opponent are doing. They're allowing people to suffer and die because they refuse to put through legislation that would help everybody. And it's quite frankly a human right. It's not something that should be a political issue. It's an inherent right that all men are born with, and our government still refuses to acknowledge.
I got to be honest with you, Graham. I don't think, generally speaking, that folks in the Commonwealth have much of a problem with their state legislator, their individual legislator, their legislature as a whole, their government as a whole, its size, its pay, its perks, its benefits, the opulence of the building itself, et cetera, if it was doing something. I tend to think that Americans generally, not just folks inside the Commonwealth, not just Pennsylvanians themselves, but Americans generally, we have shown time and time again, we'll pay for damn near anything if we think we're getting something for it, if we think it is worthwhile, if the case can be made to us that it is proper and just and worth it. I don't see huge rallies in the street to say, cut their pay. What I see is do something. Address the issues. That's what I see. Would you happen, that's a very leading question, to be fair to you, but would you happen to see it that way, or do you disagree?
I don't disagree at all. And I'm certainly not calling for the pay to be reduced or their health care to be taken away. What I'm calling out is the hypocrisy of taking that money, taking that health care, and then denying it to the people that you swore to protect, that you were put into office and swore that you would legislate for them and protect them and give them those same rights and those same perks. And then they refuse to do it. And I think there's a deep hypocrisy in saying that I'm going to take this money, I'm going to take these healthcare benefits, I'm going to take this car that's paid for by these people, and then not give them those same benefits, not legislate for them. I'm going to take money from corporations who are not the people who are paying those taxes that give them the right to have that healthcare and those salaries. So I absolutely agree with you. I don't think that we should be cutting their pay or kicking them out on the streets, taking their homes from them, or taking away their healthcare coverage. I think we should be pushing them to give those same things to the people that they claim to represent.
We have already come to the bottom of the first hour. We're halfway. We're already 30 minutes into the program. I'm still stumbling. I have no idea why. The initial beginning of the program seems to have thrown me off. I have no idea what's going on. And my cat wandered in. It's just one of those Sundays, folks. It's just a wacky, weird, I don't know what's happening. It's just a Sunday. I don't know what's happening. Everything's just a little bit off today. So I apologize. But I thank you for hanging with me. Thank you for being here, each and every single one of you. Whether you are watching us live or watching on the recording, at any of the places that you can get the program, I absolutely 100% appreciate you, and I thank you so very much. I will try to gather myself back together and put my head back together. I promise you, I'll try to get it all back together over here. This is the Kennedy Effect live for 4 October 2020. My honored guest and my ever-increasing friend is Graham Gonzales, the Democratic nominee and candidate for the Pennsylvania State House of Representatives from the 5th District, which is Berks County. We are shared now over 50 different locations on Facebook, and we are so proud of that. I believe we were in the 20s when we began the program. In April, we are now over 50, and some of those platforms are national, and we appreciate that very, very much. Wherever you are watching and listening, thank you. You can stay right where you are and enjoy the program. That's great with us. However, it is the home Facebook page, our home base for the program, That Other Side of Information, where we will see you, see your name, and where you can enter in questions and comments for myself, for Graham, for both of us, topics for discussion, anything that you want to throw in there. We're happy to see you. For our friends, family at hot101.net, DJ Lex, DJ Earl, my partner, my friend, and all too often psychiatrist April Riddick, thank you so much. We wouldn't be here without any of them. If you have not been to the main website page at hot101.net, it has been completely redesigned. It is incredibly easy to use, looks great, and of course you can listen to the program there. You can also listen on the apps for hot101.net, both for Apple at the Apple App Store. If you have an Android device, go to the Google Play Store. You can also go to the TuneIn radio app and search for hot101.net. If you have a business, a product, a service, anything that you literally want to bring to a global audience, just drop us an email, thatotherkennedy@gmail.com, thatotherkennedy@gmail.com. You can also send guest suggestions, show topics, questions for the show, questions for me, questions for Graham. We will see them and we can discuss them here. I also need to thank very much, before I get any further into the show, I need to thank George Dare, who's been helping me tremendously get the YouTube channel fixed up, fancied up, polished, and all that to get the shows over on YouTube. We are also now on Instagram and LinkedIn. There is nary a place on the digital world where you cannot find the Kennedy Effect, and we thank him very, very much for doing that. Later on in the program, we will open the phone line, and you will be able to speak to Graham and or myself. So thank you again. We return back to Graham after that very long, you know how we reset at the bottom of every hour and top of every hour. So Graham, tell me about your district. Tell me about, for myself, I happen to border Berks County. I am relatively familiar with it, but tell me about your district. The first time that you were kind enough to visit us, we got some of the interesting design of your district, and it certainly was designed. It is not natural by any means, but tell us about the geographical and demographical. I think I may have just made a word, demographical, but tell us about the design of your district, the rather intentional design of your district.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is very much so an intentional design of our district. It is very much so the result of gerrymandering, which we absolutely need a civilian panel to reconstruct, but that's a different issue for a different time. Right now, discussion of the district. So it's entirely encapsulated into the county of Berks County. Berks County itself is a very diverse district. It's got Reading City. It's got rural farmland. It's got, the suburbs of Exeter. It has many disparate parts, but my district itself sort of curves around Reading. So it kind of takes out a lot of Democratic voters and it keeps a more rural base. So we have various parts like Leesport, parts of Exeter, my hometown of Womelsdorf, Center Township. We have very different areas, and a lot of them are more rural. We have a lot of manufacturing jobs, warehouses in my district. We have a lot of farms in my district. So those are some of the issues that I try and address in my campaign and in my platform issues, and that we need to reinvest in our agricultural industry. We need to reinvigorate our farmers, provide more protections for them. In addition, we also need to protect our workers. My district is very heavy on manufacturing and warehouses. And in the state of Pennsylvania, it's still possible for somebody to work 2 16-hour days back to back and not see a dime in overtime pay, because overtime pay is based on the 7-day cycle. As long as you don't work over 40 hours across 7 whole days, then it's fine, even if the majority of those hours are crammed into 2 or 3 days. And I don't believe that's a model that's sustainable. I don't think that's right for workers. I think if a worker works more than 8 hours in an individual 24-hour day, they need to get overtime for anything over those 8 hours. I think that we need to provide better protections in the actual warehouses. Safety conditions need to be improved. We need to provide better access for workers to unionize. Again, my district is very heavy in manufacturing and warehouses, and these aren't issues that are being addressed by my opponent, by the current representative. These are things that he overlooks because he takes their votes for granted, and he doesn't address their pain points. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to represent the actual people of our district, as crazy a thought as it might be.
Why is that such a crazy thought? Why has that become such a crazy thought? Look, I know you went to school for political science and economics, and I understand I did not. I went to school to teach, and I try to do that every week on this program. I understand the formal book regimented political science. I get that. Tell me, I'm going to word this poorly, but tell me, as the human being, Graham Gonzales, why is that such a radical idea? Why has that been labeled as such a radical idea, to actually listen to the people of the district and actually look out for them? It seems to me that there's a reason why it's the top 1% and the 99%. If there's 100 people in the room and one person wants one thing and 99 people want something different, then it's pretty damn easy to figure out that we'll do what 99 people want and need. But our nation doesn't seem to be doing any of that. Our Commonwealth doesn't seem to be doing it. Too many of the 67 counties don't seem to be doing it. An overwhelming percentage of our municipalities are not doing it. Certainly the country is not doing it, and has not been for at least 40 years, if not 50, going back into the Nixon administrations. When did that become such a radical idea, combining both your formal education and your own personal experiences?
Absolutely. From both, it's very clear. It's the idea, to use your example, say there's 100 people in a room and one person wants one thing and 99 want the other. But say there's a judge there, an arbiter, who makes the decision of what the outcome is. Well, if the one person is paying that arbiter's salary, they're going to go with the one person and not the 99. And that's sort of the issue here, is that top 1%, the corporations, the wealthy, party leaders, insiders, people who have the means and funds, are streamlining the process so that they're the ones funding campaigns. They're the ones providing super PACs for these candidates. And then because they're the ones putting them in the power, they can pull that rug out from them any election cycle they want to, which means that they keep them on a tight rope. And like my opponent, they basically tell them, you vote for this legislation or you're not going to see a next term. And so that's kind of what's happened, is over the years, and the data will show this, over the years, more and more money has been poured into politics. And because our campaign finance laws have allowed that, people are taking those funds from corporations, they're taking them from wealthy individual donors. And like you said, even though it goes against the majority, when those people are shutting out smaller candidates who have smaller access to funds and sort of not allowing them to get their message out, when the 99 go to actually vote, because the vote is still technically in their hands, they don't hear the other candidates. They don't see them because they've been shut out, because the people who are representing that 1%'s interest are the ones who, with the ads on television, the ones who are able to put up the signs everywhere, the ones who are able to send out mailers and be on the radio. They're the ones who can basically flood a message out. And the message is often deterring, or it's often misleading, or it's often flat out lies, but it doesn't matter because they can just flood the airways.
Well, is it the campaign finance laws themselves, or is it the courts? It would seem to me that this started with the Powell memo, and when Powell became Robert Powell, I think Robert is his first name. When I just know it's Justice Powell. I always refer to him as Justice Powell. I think Robert was his first name. Is it the Powell memo and Justice Powell? Doesn't it really come from the courts, or is it the campaign finance laws? It seems to me that even John McCain himself actually saw the the destructive nature of the overwhelming piles and piles and piles of money that was coming into the system and buying off the system. The best investment in the Commonwealth, if not the entire country, for sure, is a politician. I mean, you can offer inside the Commonwealth, you can offer a state rep $250, $500, $1,000, and if you're in the fossil fuel industry, get back billions in free money. That's a hell of a return. I think anybody would buy a stock for $250, and the return you were going to get was approximately $3.2 billion a year. You'd take that bet. You'd buy that stock. So is it really campaign finance reform? I'm really tapping into your education here. Is it really the campaign finance laws and legislation, or is it the courts, starting with the Powell Supreme Court, who said it's constitutionally okay to buy off politicians and that corporations are people? I haven't seen a corporation yet charged with murder. I haven't seen a corporation yet taken to jail. Which is it?
So you're definitely right. You're absolutely right. It is more, it's a little nuanced, and the issue here is that you're right. Money can't be completely taken out of politics. Citizens United has been quite clear on that. But campaign finance reform laws can limit the amount of money, who it comes from, and the oversight with which it flows through, so that it's more transparent to the people, who's being funded, how they're being funded, where the money's coming from, the meetings that they're holding, the coordination of campaigns and super PACs. There's a lot that can be done to sort of make it more transparent and also limit who can send what amounts of money. So you're correct. Citizens United did make it very clear, and it is a Supreme Court mandate that you absolutely can't take.
I would say it goes back and starts to the Buckley decision, and then we move forward from there. That starts with Buckley, but then it moves forward from there.
And it is very
United
clear.
Was probably the final nail in the coffin, but yeah, we're clearly on the same page. But yes, I'm and I apologize, I'm talking over you, Graham. You're the guest here. I should be more polite, but we're essentially, it is you want to know one place where trickle down has worked? That's where it's worked. That's where trickle down has worked. It started from the Supreme Court, and it has trickled down, except that you poured. I can't say that on the radio, or at least I won't allow myself to say it on the radio, even though we're not governed by the FCC in the same way that terrestrial radio is governed. You poured dirty motor oil all over us and told us it was rain. And there's another word for dirty motor oil, but I won't say it. That saying, if you know that saying, folks, you know what I'm talking about. There's another word. There's another liquid we usually use in that saying, the old Irish there. Don't you know what on us and tell us it's raining. But you poured dirty motor oil over us and told us it was rain. That's one place where trickle down has worked. The Supreme Court, the Kochs and big money went to the Supreme Court and said, but we're people. Why can't corporations have a place they got a sympathetic court, and the courts said, yep, you sure can. And then the money flowed. And it's Citizens United that gave us these 501c4s and these dirty monies and the PACs and the super PACs and the on and on and ons. And we didn't know where, and we don't know where any of this money's coming from. And I assume your opponent, we don't generally in politics, it is a bad form to give too much press to your opponent, but you have not explained who your opponent is. You probably should a little bit. Who is your opponent?
Yep. So my opponent has been spent multiple terms in office. He's a former state police trooper, then became a sheriff. He's now collecting pensions from the state off of those. And for the past couple of terms, he's been state representative for the 5th District. And the reason why they brought him in is because, he had this long record of service. And then they brought him in to basically be a yes man. They knew that he could get the votes. They knew that people would vote for somebody with this kind of record. And they knew that he wouldn't sit there and, he wouldn't address the pain points of the district. He wouldn't cause any ruckus in the state house. He wouldn't break from party ranks. He's the kind of man who lines up right behind his party. He's the kind of man who's lined up right behind Donald Trump, a white nationalist who's caught on tape describing violence against women. This is the kind of man that he supports. It's kind of the feckless coward that will stand back and allow these things to happen just because he he's decided to be a retirement candidate. This is the kind of things that he supports. He doesn't care. He doesn't care about the people. He doesn't care about legislating. He doesn't care about doing the job. He cares about collecting his pensions, receiving his health care from the state, collecting an entire $90,000 plus salary from the state, and just sitting back on his farm and not doing anything and showing up to Harrisburg when his party leaders need him to vote. And that's the kind of man that he is.
So 2 full pensions and a legislative salary and health benefits.
Yeah.
Pretty nice. I've been out of work for 6 months. That's pretty nice. I'd take one pension. That's pretty nice. And in a world, by the way, where most folks don't get a pension anymore.
Yep. And a lot of people are losing them right now.
We get 401ks. We get 401ks.
Oh, yeah.
This is why I promised you folks that I was considering making a small dollar investment in the program in my continuing red budget here at the program and I unleash on you the whiteboard of death. It's a little hard to see. I'm going to have to work on where I'm going to put the whiteboard. I may have to hang it up here, but it has a very simple message on it. Perhaps if you're watching if you watch the program on the recording, you can pinch out and blow up the I don't know if you can do that with a video. I know you can do it with a still photo, but it's a very simple message on the whiteboard of trouble here, the whiteboard of argument, which is very simple. It just says to self-identified Republicans and conservatives, make me an economic argument. Stop shouting at me about these ridiculous quote unquote social issues. I don't care about them. I don't care where you worship. I don't care what you think about guns. I don't care if you have 1, 10, or 200 in your attic or your basement. They're not feeding you. They're not paying the mortgage. They're not taking the size of your kids' classes down from 45 students to where they should be at 15 or 18. Don't care about any of it. Make me an economic argument, because I've yet to have one. Still. And not, by the way, since I've just been doing this program, but since I've literally come out of the womb. Give me an economic argument. You haven't given me one because you don't have one. That's why you argue with me. That's why you bring up the other crap, because you don't have an economic argument. That's why you throw that other shite at me, because there is no economic argument. That's why you talk about God, gays, guns, and everything else, because you can't talk economics. Talk to me about economics. How many terms has your opponent been in office?
This is his 3rd term. He's looking for another one. I don't think we should give it to him. He hasn't earned any of the terms that he's spent, and he hasn't done anything for the people that have been in office with him. He hasn't represented the people. He hasn't worked across the aisle with anybody. He hasn't even tried to do anything. Like I said, he's just a yes man for his party leaders. He's willing to vote yes or no on whatever they want him to. They just call him up and tell him, get down there in Harrisburg and vote, and he does what they want him to do.
It is debate season. Have you had any? Will you be having any? Have you challenged for debates, forums, public questioning, any type of joint public arranged forum debates, anything like that coming up?
Actually, no. And I reached out to my opponent. I asked him if we could set up a public virtual debate, something where, like you and I are doing right now, we hop on a Zoom call, we let voters come in. Our campaigns can work out the details of who will be hosting. You might have been one of the people that if you had actually responded to it, I would have asked to host, and then you would have brought in the questions.
I don't think I would have got that gig, Graham. I don't think I would have got that gig. I appreciate the offer, but I don't think I would have got that gig. I would have been very fair about it though, but I don't think I would have got that gig. Yeah. But I appreciate the offer. I would have done it in a heartbeat.
Unfortunately, he didn't respond. I've reached out to him. He doesn't want to debate. And again, it's him taking for granted the voters in our district. He thinks regardless of what happens, he doesn't need to show out because he thinks they're going to show out for him. He doesn't need to legislate for them because he thinks they're going to vote for him. He doesn't need to go and meet with them because they're going to vote for him. He doesn't need to reach out to them because they're going to vote for him. He's taking everybody for granted. And I think it's time that our voters show up and say, I don't care if Graham's a Democrat or Republican, Independent, it doesn't matter. We need an individual in office who's going to reach out to us, who's going to hear our voices, who's going to take our feedback, and then legislate and act on those things rather than just listening to party leaders, special interests, corporate interests. You need an individual who's going to listen and represent the people, and he absolutely doesn't do that. And this is just another prime example of it.
Well, I hope that you will continue to pursue it. I think debates are a vital part of democracy. This is a job interview, campaigning. He wants to keep the job. You want to take the job. It is a job interview. And these positions are not bequeathed. They are not inherited. They are not to be passed down. They are to be earned at least in the Pennsylvania State House, every 2 years, in the Senate every 4, in the United States House every 2 years, in the Senate every 6, in the presidency every 4. A little more civics for you. They are to be earned. They are not to be bequeathed or inherited or handed down or passed down or, insert proper term here, whatever you want to digest. He has to be interviewed. He has to be interviewed. I hope you will pursue it. And if he doesn't show up, I hope you find a sponsor and a host. I would have gladly done it, and I would have been exceptionally fair in the questioning, beyond fair in the questioning. I hope you find a sponsor. I hope you find a host, and I hope when he does not show up, I hope you debate an empty chair or an empty square. So in this particular point of view, I hope you debate an empty square, because that in and of itself, in one of my other iterations as political consultant, I think it's exceptionally powerful when someone refuses to stand up for themselves. I love the tough Republicans who wrap themselves in flags and the Constitution and don't tread on me flags, and then when they have to stand up and defend themselves and their record, refuse to do so. Go hide and cower in the corner. I find that fascinating, to be honest. I find it absolutely fascinating. How have you found this? And this is your first run, so you don't have anything to compare it to, which is kind of odd. But you're not, you studied this in schooling, so you're not dumb. Obviously, you know what a traditional campaign is supposed to look like. How have you found this campaign? What have you taken from it? This is something you're going to be able to carry with you for the rest of your life. I assume that regardless of the outcome of this election, you're not going to shy away from politics. This is an experience you're going to be able to take with you for the rest of your life, and tell the grandkids someday that my very first run was right in the middle of a COVID pandemic. How have you found this campaign?
It's definitely been very interesting. So coming out of the gates, I knew that one of the main campaign strategy I was going to have in this election cycle was basically the sort of foot soldier knocking on doors, meeting people person to person, because that's exactly what my candidate doesn't do. And so that was going to be sort of tantamount to the main campaign strategy. And obviously COVID comes around and it changes everything for everyone. And so that was something that I had to basically review our entire strategy and do a very quick pivot. And so I've been on more Zoom calls than I've possibly ever been in my entire life in the past year.
And more than you ever wanted to be.
Yeah, I'm a person who very much so enjoys being in person, meeting people in person. So, looking at a camera screen and meeting people month after month is very weird. It's definitely something I've gotten used to. I use it quite a lot. And we've basically completely transformed our campaign strategy. So we've reached out through mailers. We have a huge texting campaign to reach out to people so we can still interact one-on-one. It's definitely something where it's harder to get out to reach people in person. I still, every once in a while, if somebody requests, a sign or something, I'll go out and meet them and speak with them. And it's really great to meet people in our district, sort of speak with them, get to know their issues. Everybody's got something on the top of their mind, and I'm very happy to listen and hear it, because every piece of feedback is important. It informs my policies going forward. It would inform me as a state representative. And that's the kind of person that I am. I believe in listening to the people and taking that and moving forward. But it's definitely been kind of interesting, especially seeing that my opponent really hasn't put together a strategy. Again, he takes for granted the votes. He thinks, people are just going to show out for him. People are just going to vote for him. They're not going to, sort of push back. And that's what I've been trying to put out there, is basically saying, hey, This guy's a retirement candidate and he's collecting pensions while you might lose your job and your pension. And I'm at right now, right here, reaching out to you and speaking to you. I want to hear your voice. I want to know your issues, and I want you to know that I'm going to be here regardless. Doesn't matter if this pandemic lasts another year, another 2 years. As your state representative, I work with health officials. I'll work with economists. I'll work with lawyers to put through legislation and make sure that your input informs all of those decisions so that I know where you're hurting and that we can fix it. I'm not the kind of person who's going to sit back on my farm, collect pensions, and do nothing. I'm not a do nothing candidate. I'm a person who wants to get out there, meet people, hear them, and hear what issues mean most to them. And that's what we've been trying to do through our campaign. I'll bet it being a very much so virtual platform now that we have to sort of do through Zooms, texting, mailers, and whatnot.
Have you done any in-person campaigning at all?
Before COVID, yes. Now it's very much so limited to getting out and just meeting people if they request something, if they request more materials or a sign. Again, I know a lot of people, especially in the Republican Party, are doing door-to-door canvassing, and I think you can kind of see where the results of that gets you. Look at our president. Right now, he's at Walter Reed Hospital. And I know that it might be detrimental to my campaign to not be knocking door-to-door, but again, I put people first. I'm not going to have any of my volunteers, myself, or the people that we'd be knocking on the doors of in harm's way. And even though we might be wearing masks, it's still not something that I would say is advisable. It's not something public health officials would say is advisable. And unlike my opponent and a lot of people in his party, I do listen to scientists and public health officials, and I'm not going to put anybody in harm's way, regardless of its detriment to my campaign or its strategy. I'm going to follow what they're saying. I'm going to follow their guidelines. I'm going to make sure this is a safe and straightforward campaign. Everything I do is above water.
You listen to scientists? You tree hugger. You hippie tree hugger, you, Graham.
Insane.
You silly hippie tree hugger. My goodness. So are you, I understand you did answer my question. I do want to ask you if you could possibly to elaborate a little bit on it. So you've done a lot of Zoom, you've done a lot of online, you have done texting, phone banking, yard signs, mailers. Tell me a bit about what I understand. You did answer me. I'm asking you to elaborate if you could, please. Zoom, I get it. What else have you done? Is it those four things, the phone banking, the texting? Tell me about the other things that you've done.
Yep, absolutely. So to date, we've done a lot of Zoom. We've done a lot of texting campaigns to sort of reach out to people. We're currently putting together a sort of last push in terms of phone banking. And we've also put out mailers to quite literally almost every registered voter in our district. Republicans, independents, Democrats, I want everybody to show out. It doesn't matter if you're a Democrat, you're a Republican, you're an independent. I believe in reaching out to everybody. I'm not somebody who's going to say, I only want Democrats voting for me. Only our party. I'm a person who believes in representing everybody in our group. It doesn't matter whether you vote red or blue. I want you to know that I'm the candidate for you. It doesn't matter if I win and I'm caucusing with the Democratic Party. It doesn't matter. I'm going to be listening to your issues. And so those are the kind of things that I've been trying to push out to people, because they need to understand that unlike my opponent, who basically sits back and only listens to the Republican Party, I'm not going to be listening to the Democratic Party leaders or the Republican Party leaders or corporations. I'm going to be listening to the 60,000 people in District 5 for the State House of Representatives in Berks County and what their issues are. And it doesn't matter, the other voices that are trying to whisper in my ear or tell me what to do. I'm going to be legislating for the people. And so that's the message that I've consistently tried to push out. And, we've had people are very excited about it. We have some Republicans that aren't so excited about it. They're still for Joswiak. I still encourage everybody to get out to vote. It doesn't matter. It's a civic duty. I'm not going to discourage anybody. Even if you're not voting for me, you should get out and use your voice.
Regular listeners and viewers of the program will know that the last several months, actually, going back to the primary in June, I have been saying at the end of every single program, go vote. I've also been talking about the census, which I will do again today. Go and vote. I am a proud, open, out, loud member of the Democratic Party. I am a Kennedy. I have been a member of the Democratic Party since conception. There you go, abortion fans. Since conception. And my party is not perfect. If I may be so bold as to make Graham's words a bit more concise and possibly even speak for him, which I have no right to do, but if I may make that assumption, our party is not perfect. It could stand to use a lot of improvement, but it is the party that is not entirely bought and paid for. It is not a wholly owned subsidiary. One of the brilliant moves that we do not always give credit for, that we do not always conceptualize, and that we do not always recognize in order to counter is that while the Koch brothers, there's only one brother that remains politically active, the other has passed, but what we don't always give enough credit to the Koch brothers for is that while they had enough money to create a third party in this country, they didn't. They used their business acumen and decided it would be a lot cheaper if we just bought one. And so that's what they did. It is and can be cheaper to buy a home and refurbish it than it is to build one from scratch. And under the American Constitution, you'll notice, if you look through history, when we do, there was a very fancy term that became very colloquial and became quite the buzzword during the George W. Bush 8 years, and that was nation building. You'll notice that when we go into these other nations and nation build, we never give them the kind of government that we have. We never give them a U.S. constitutional form of government. 3 branches, 2 houses, checks, balances. We give them a parliamentary system with multiple parties, sometimes double-digit numbers of parties, and a prime minister. We don't give them 3 branches the way we have it here. So the Kochs used their business sense and realized that rather than try to create a third party, a full third party, or third party, I always make my 3s this way, it's easier to see them. They decided it would be cheaper if they just bought one. And what was the easier one to buy? The one that was already working for the interests of folks like them, the richest among us. Remember, the Koch network, that would be the American Heritage Foundation, Citizens for Tax Fairness. There's a whole host of ones that'll pop into my head probably in the middle of another conversation, and I will probably blurt them out, sadly, in the middle of some other topic, and they'll come to me and then I'll end up blurting them out. ALEC, there's another one, sorry, ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council, spends more money, passes through more money, and employs more full-time people than both parties combined. That's not by accident. It's not by accident. It's because they want something. And generally, when you want something, how do you get it? You purchase it. Whether you go to the grocery store and you want a gallon of milk, or you need a gallon of milk, how do you get it? You purchase it. If you're not a dairy farmer, how do you get it? You purchase it. You go to a clothing store, you may not need that lovely new item of clothing, but you want it. So how do you get it? You purchase it. 6:06 on the Eastern time zone of the United States. This is the Kennedy Effect live for October 4th, 2020. My guest is the Honorable Graham Gonzales, Democratic nominee and candidate for the 5th District of the Pennsylvania House of Representatives. The election is 30 days, less than a month away, November 3rd, and today's the 4th. So we're under a month, folks. We are under a month. Wherever you may be listening, we are glad that you are here. We thank you for being here. over the 50 different Facebook groups, pages, platforms, wherever it is that you are listening. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Each and every single one of you. We appreciate it very, very much. It is our home Facebook page, though. Our home Facebook page titled That Other Side of Information, where you will be able to enter your comments and questions to us live. Also, that other side of information, by the way, continues to live and exist and breathe and change and grow in between shows. We post articles there all week. April, George, and I, and Grant, by the way, the administrators, I always say administrators, the administrators of the page. We post information there, articles, things to read, interesting things, and not all politics, by the way. I happen to post science articles, environmental articles, sociological articles, human interest stories. They are posted there all week. I invite you very much to become a member of the page and, read about what's going on in the world. International stories. There's armed conflict going on right now between Azerbaijan and Armenia that I post a lot about. Greece and Turkey are on the brink of war over mineral rights in the Mediterranean Sea. That's 2 NATO countries on the brink of war with each other. The ever-increasing autocracy and dictatorship happening to Turkey, has connections right here in the Lehigh Valley with inside the Pennsylvania Democratic Party, by the way. So that is interesting. So please come to the page, ask to be a member, and join us on that other side of information. So if you are wherever you're watching, great. But if you want to come to that other side of information and join the interactive chat there that is happening literally as we speak, I'm looking at it right now, you can do so. We will open up the phone line. I will change how the screen looks and put the phone number up there. You can talk to Grant or myself. Hot 101 family, thank you for welcoming me back onto your speakers, your car radios, your smart speakers, your devices, however you take in Hot 101. Thank you again, DJ Lex, DJ Earl, and my partner and dear friend and all too often psychiatrist April Riddick. Thank you. Go to the Hot 101 main website page. It has been completely redesigned. It looks fantastic. It is extremely easy to navigate, and you can listen there as well. You can also find hot101.net on the Apple App Store. If you have an Apple device, you can download it and listen there. You have an Android device, you can go to the Google Play Store. If you have the TuneIn Radio app, you can just search for hot101.net there. If you have a business, a product, a service, something that you want to advertise, please email us at thatotherkennedy@gmail.com, and we can read that advertisement here for you right here on the program. You can also email us for anything that might be related to the program. That is the email for the Kennedy Effect, thatotherkennedy@gmail.com, thatotherkennedy@gmail.com. The phone number for the program, get ready. I hope you have a pen and paper ready, or a stone tablet if you're old like me and you can chisel it into stone, or you can type it quick and put a note on your phone, whatever it is. If you're young and tech savvy, or scratch it into wood, whatever it is that you want to do. Here's the phone line. I will put it on the screen shortly. 267-227-9189 is the phone number. 267-227-9189. 267-227-9189. 267-227-9189. And I will put that number on the screen as Grant graces me with the next answer to the next question that I posed to him. So one of the items that you went to university for, you mentioned, was economics. Economics is a bit of a funny thing. It's exceptionally complex, but also we tend to, as a populace as a whole, we tend to conflate what the national government can do with what local and state and county governments can do. We tend to blame all of government for economic problems that particular levels of government can do nothing about. The national economy goes sour, but then we look to Governor Wolf and say, you trash the economy. Well, He's not exactly responsible for that. Or would be Republican Governor DeWine in Ohio. It's a national economy. Economies are much more national and global than they are state and local or county. I believe you would agree with me, and you are welcome to disagree. You're the one that went to school for it. I didn't, but you can agree with me or disagree with me as much as you wish. But with all that said, and that is actually part of my question, but with all that said, you are elected, you're sworn in. What within the borders of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, or for our listeners who are in various other states, what can a state level legislator, as you wish to be, do to help folks on an economic level? As these economies, again, are much more top down, they're much more national down. What can a legislator do to help a local economy?
Yep, absolutely. And it's just a small correction too, because I know you mentioned a few times, it's Graham, not Grant.
One of the administrators of the page is Grant.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Got
no, you're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct. There are limitations that a state can do because, again, the majority of your taxes do go to the federal government, and thus the majority of funds that are available to enact new legislation or to put in new programs or projects is going to come from the federal level. But that limitation kind of comes from the fact that states have to balance their budget, whereas the federal government can accept on more debt. Whereas, Governor Wolf, myself as a state representative, we would have to balance our budget. But there's a caveat to that in a sense that the federal government does provide states with lots of funds. And it's for state governments to direct those funds and put them where they see fit or where they can put them to best use. And that's sort of how our federal government works. It's this idea that, yes, the national government does accept these funds and then they put them to different use in different areas and allocate them to different states. So while we would be limited to making sure that we balance our budget, we would be able to work with the federal government to receive federal funds, and then we ourselves would be the ones directly overseeing how those funds are allocated and used. And during this pandemic, I think it's shown a clear need for us to use funds to put people back to work. And one of the biggest issues in our state right now is our crumbling infrastructure. It's one of the worst in the entire country. And that's kind of something that should make any one of us step back and feel a little bit weird about, considering the fact that we have the 6th largest economy and one of the worst infrastructures. Our state economy is incredibly prosperous, yet we're not able to have, nice roads, nice sidewalks. We're not able to invest in our parks. And I think that's something that we need to address. And I think it's a good way to put Pennsylvanians back to work, is to take both state funds and federal funds and invest them in a large infrastructure project that we can invest in green infrastructure, our state parks, our local parks, maintenance of our existing infrastructure, make sure that our roads and bridges are safe and at capacity. And I think time and time again, those large projects that we've invested in, either as a country or as a state, have proven that it trickles to every single person. Investing in the state's infrastructure is an investment in the people, and it would be something that would get everybody back to work. There would be new construction jobs, there would be new project managers, there would be new businesses that pop up so that they can support these initiatives. It would be something that would both help our state, help our transportation, reduce our emissions, because we would be able to invest in new green infrastructure, and it would reduce our population that's unemployed right now. So it would be both beneficial long-term for the state and beneficial in the short term for the people who are out of jobs. And so to your point, yes, to sum it up, yes, we are limited, but we do have state funds that we can make available for these initiatives, and we can work with the federal government with the federal funds that we do receive to allocate them in the way that we think is most beneficial for the state. And I think that's the way to get us back to work.
Do you find it strange? Let me rephrase this. Is the fossil fuel industry a large employer in the 5th district?
No, it is. I mean, the fossil fuel industry does play its part in Pennsylvania, but it is not a huge employer in the 5th district. Again, it's much so more so warehouses or manufacturing and typical company type things. We're not fracking in the 5th district, but again, that
There are
is an issue that needs to be addressed.
There are pipelines that go through the 5th, I'm assuming, because there's pretty much
Yes.
pipelines that go through everywhere in the state. But I mean, you have pipelines that go through the district, and I assume that there's probably somebody in the district that travels out of the district working for the fossil fuel industry. But generally speaking, the fossil fuel industry is not a huge employer in your district. Generally speaking.
No, it's not, but it's still an industry and it's still a job sector that I wouldn't want to overlook. If we did infrastructure investments, especially in green infrastructure, I would say that we also need to invest in workforce training programs, and we need to invest in those first so that the people who are in non-renewable energy are getting trained before we start investing in that green infrastructure. And then once those programs are up and running, they're the first people offered jobs in a renewable job and the renewable energy job sector. It would be something where we're just shifting them, we're training them and shifting them to new jobs. And I know fossil fuel companies are going to push back on that kind of thing. And that's why it's so hard to push through, because a lot of politicians are bought and paid for by companies, and they try and make it seem that these people are going to lose their jobs. But if we invest our resources in the right way, these people are going to be well equipped, better trained than anybody else, and then be set off into an entire new industry where they'll be on the front lines of our success for the future.
When I do a simple search, how many fossil fuel jobs are there in Pennsylvania? I get a wide variety of answers. From the fossil fuel industry itself, I get an answer of over 54,000. I also get answers as low as 26,000. But I also get answers pretty much across the board from all sources that there are already more in upwards of 90,000 green energy jobs in Pennsylvania. And clearly, when we see as huge a company as Chesapeake declare bankruptcy and literally shut down and go out of business, why is it such a hard sell inside Pennsylvania that green energy is quite literally the future? And not just here, but really around the globe. But obviously people who live here are worried about here first, and that makes perfect sense. If your house is on fire, you're worried about your house, not the house on fire 3 states away. Why is it such a hard sell to folks? And maybe it's not as hard to sell in your district, but certainly in the center of the state, in the more rural areas of the state where they are fracking. Why do you believe it's such a hard sell to folks that green energy, maybe not even the Green New Deal itself, but just the green revolution, a push, a move away from fracking toward green energy, is such a difficult concept? It's such a hard sell. It's such why it seems to be so resistant. I would guess that the obvious answer is that the fossil fuel industry is pouring all sorts of money into campaigns and political races. That's an easy answer, which is interesting because you could make the argument that it's your own tax dollars being used to convince you, since we give them over $3 billion in free money a year anyway. And which is interesting also when a state has to balance its own budget, that we're handing money away. But when you generally talk to people, they are worried about their fracking jobs. But you're talking about anywhere from 3 to 4 times as many, double to quadruple the number of jobs are already in green energy. Why do you think it's such a hard sell?
I think this is something that is sort of threefold. And the first part is that people are very resistant to change, especially large change. Anybody is. If you had to pack up and move from your house tomorrow, that would be a large change, and it would be something that would sort of rattle you. And it's instinctive for any one of us to look at something and be suspicious of a large change, because if it fundamentally changes your job, your lifestyle, everything, it's natural to sort of look at it and be skeptical because it affects you so deeply. So a lot of people are naturally going into it very skeptical and very risk aware of a large change. Secondly, there's been a lot of misinformation campaigns around the science behind global warming and climate change, which has sort of turned people off from the initiatives because they think, why are we doing it for something that I don't believe exists? So we sort of have had to get to a baseline point where we say, you have to believe the science. You have to believe the very basis for why we would create such an initiative in order to support it, obviously. So that's sort of one of the big issues, is getting people to support that science. So now we've sort of gotten a majority of people to believe behind that science, which leads to the third part, which is another, huge campaign of misinformation, which is you're going to lose your job. You're going to lose your pension. You're never going to find another job. They're not going to care about you. You're going to get left behind. You're not going to be retrained. And that's why in my proposal, I say we need to train them first before we invest in those green infrastructure initiatives and push forward that flow of money, so that 50,000 people in those non-renewable energy jobs have a place. They're not left behind. Because like you said, at the end of the day, people are going to be worried about their own home, their family, their paycheck, their livelihoods. Am I going to have to work basically until I'm dead because I got fired and I had to find something else? I lost my pension. I lost this. My company went out of business. And so again, that goes back into people are rightfully so wary of large change. And we need to do our best when we put together policy initiatives and legislation to say, hey, we're going to take care of you first, and then we're going to move forward with these initiatives. You're not going to be left behind.
267-227-9189 is the number. 267-227-9189. Is it oversimplistic of me, because I do this a lot, and I must admit I don't always get the nicest response? Is it oversimplistic to say such examples as, we don't use a horse and buggy to get around anymore? We don't have, when is the last time you saw the gentleman walk down Main Street and light the street lamps with the long stick and a flame to light the gas street lamp?
I believe that's Mary Poppins.
I mean, it's because we evolved and we moved on. We don't shovel coal into the steam engine to drive the train. We don't. Now I could also, we obviously need to move on from diesel from that too, but that's a whole different topic. I mean, it would seem to me, especially because I've had this argument with the folks in that particular union, if you can weld the gas pipeline, you can weld a wind turbine. You can weld the framing that goes onto the roof of a house to hold a solar panel, or onto a government building, or onto a new office tower, or onto the I think we've all seen the car parks at these larger office complexes where they use the solar panels as coverings for the cars themselves. So you can walk out of your office building when it's pouring down rain or snowing or whatever else. Your car is actually covered in dry because there's a solar panel on top of it. If you can weld, you can weld, you can weld. Perhaps that's an oversimplification. I personally do not know how to weld, but is that an oversimplification of trying to make that case to folks? Is that a discussion that you have on occasion, or does that allay people's fears?
So I definitely think that it's not necessarily an oversimplification. I think there's some more nuance to it, in the sense that, yes, I still think that they would probably have to be retrained in how to weld a specific mechanism, or, say a solar panel, but it's much easier to train somebody who's been a welder before and welded, some things for the fossil fuel industry, to weld that rather than get somebody from scratch. So it's sort of just retraining, and would be very quick, because rather than bring in new recruits who don't know what they're doing, you've got 50,000 people who are already technically proficient in their various jobs, and we can put them to work immediately in different jobs for the renewable energy sector. So I think that it's definitely something that we can basically take their existing skill sets, add to it a little bit, add some nuance to their training, and then immediately put them to work in new jobs that are on the front line of our long-term success. But to your point, it doesn't necessarily allay fears, because people are rightfully so distrustful of these policy initiatives, because too often people do get left behind. People are used to companies cutting their workforce and kicking them out right before they're due to get their pensions. People are used to companies failing and falling, and then they lose their jobs, they lose their livelihoods, they have to downgrade to a smaller house, they lose their healthcare coverage, they don't know how to take care of their sick child or their sick partner. They don't, these are very base things that they worry about, but they're the most important things in any individual's life. And they're rightfully so distrustful because this is a big change. And if they do get left behind, the risk, even though we might not see it ourselves, is too large for them to sort of accept. So we need to do the best we can to sort of do a change management exercise of saying, here's the specific policies we're taking. This is exactly the type of training you're going to go through. And this is the exact kind of jobs that we're going to have open for you, so that they can sort of clearly see the outline and the roadmap of the 1 year, 2 year, 3 year future for themselves. So they're not thinking, hey, in 2 years, am I going to have a job? Even if they give me this workforce training program, am I going to be accepted into a job, or are they just training me for something that may fall through the cracks? So we need to do our best to ensure these people and make sure that they understand and know that they're not going to get left behind and that we're going to take care of them.
There are certain climate models and maps. I'm sure you've seen those interactive maps that if you drag the bar across and watch the ocean levels rise, sea level rise, water levels rise, that depending on the map that you may look at, most of them are quite consistent. If you drag out the timeline, I believe to the next 100 years, and go to the max amount of ice melt, and then keep your eye focused on the Commonwealth, you and I might be waterfront. We may have been extremely prescient in where we decided to buy real estate, because you and I might be waterfront. I posted on that other side of information, folks. If you're already a member of the group, please feel free to scroll back. It's probably beyond, it might be as far back as 3 weeks now. If you're not currently a member of the group, visit, ask for admission. We can make you part of a member of the group. It was a BBC article. It was a map that showed the maximum amount of ice melt within the next century. The Lehigh Valley, on a curve that kind of looked like the modern top curve of the state of Delaware. If you're familiar at all with the boundaries of the state of Delaware, it looked like the top of the state of Delaware has that curve to it. There was a water curve inside the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania that curved the bottom portion of the Delaware Valley, or the Lehigh Valley, and curved into Berks, where Graham is, where he and I now have waterfront property. Our property values are ready to escalate quite nicely, but for all the wrong reasons. For all of the absolute wrong reasons. And is this the kind of, I wonder why those types of graphics and information, and why that kind of interactive, very visible, visual, striking type of facts are not scaring more folks. I wonder, I mean, you're much younger than me, but even you know, things aren't like they were when you were a kid either. How many tornado warnings do you remember when you were a kid?
Probably none.
But they're relatively regular now, aren't they?
Yep.
How many times did you see hail this summer?
Quite a few number of times. And also, I mean, in the rest of the country too, the number of hurricanes that have come through have just exponentially grown. And I think, to your point, it's one of those things that it's quite similar to the way economists view companies. They say a lot of times, because of the stakeholders in a company, the executive board, right? They're compensated for, quarterly earnings, yearly earnings. So a lot of times they'll forego long-term growth for short-term gains, because then they get their $10 million, $20 million salary from shareholders, and so they're only looking towards, a CEO's average tenure might be 5 to 10 years. And so they're only looking for that 5 to 10 year gains They're not looking to have this company, the company that they represent, be a 100-year, a 200-year, behemoth, something that's something that just stays throughout time. They're looking for the maximum value for themselves. And so I think that same concept kind of relates to this and to what you mentioned, where if your house is on fire, you're not going to be thinking of the house on fire 3 states from there. So if you're thinking about your job, your economic opportunities, taking care of your family, a lot of people are heads down because they have such burdens that state legislators, federal representatives don't take care of. The most basic things like the human right to healthcare. People have to think about where they're going to get their healthcare, what kind of plan they're going to have, if they're going to be able to take care of their sick child, they're going to take care of themselves. And so they're just sort of so heads down on focusing on themselves, on their home, their family, their life, that it's kind of hard to sort of pull your head up and look up and say, hey, in 50 years from now, we might have an entire coastline underwater. It's not something that people can really comprehend when you're putting out 1,000 fires in your own home, metaphorically speaking, and you're trying to make sure that you're planning for your retirement, you're planning for your kids to go to college, you're planning to make sure that you have adequate health care in case something comes up, you're using your savings right now during COVID, and so you got to make a new plan on how to sort of boost your savings before retirement. And everybody's just putting out so many fires that they're not able to sort of just look up and say, hey, we really need to tackle climate change because it's going to wipe out an entire coastline and millions are going to lose their lives. It's not something that you can see because you get so wrapped up into your everyday problems. And it's nobody's fault. It's the fact that we create those problems. Government isn't solving enough problems, so people have to solve them themselves individually, and they're not able to look up and see the bigger problems in the future.
One of the great messaging, it's a fallacy. It's a fake. It's a fallacy. But it is one of the great messaging successes of the Reagan administration was to convince the people of this nation that we are not a society, that we are not a community, that we are not a collective, that we are a group of rugged individuals. And nothing could be further from the truth. Nothing could be further from the truth. Because to take that analogy a bit further, when my house is on fire, that's the only thing I can think about and the only thing I'm concerned with. I'm pretty damn sure that my neighbor is worried about it as well, because their house is next.
And you're not the only person who puts out that fire. There's people who come to help you to put it out, whether it's your neighbors, the local firefighters. You're not in this alone. And I think that's something that's important.
That damn dirty socialist fire company comes and helps me. Yeah, exactly. Bottom of our second hour here, 6:34 Eastern Time in the United States. This is the Kennedy Effect for 4 October 2020. We are live with Graham Gonzales. If you're watching us live, thank you. If you're watching on the recording, thank you. These new fancy analytics that I am privy to now on Facebook at That Other Side of Information shows that the reach of the show is, at least through Facebook anyway, is now averaging between 2,500 and 3,000 folks a week. We are thrilled about that, and we thank each and every single one of you. Join us at That Other Side of Information if you want to be part of the interactive chat. The phone line is open, 267-227-9189. Questions for Graham, for myself, 267-227-9189. To our friends and family at hot101.net, thank you again for welcoming us onto your devices, smart speakers, however you are listening. The main website page, the newly redesigned main website page, super great to look at, very, very easy to use. The Apple App Store, Google Play Store for Android devices, the TuneIn Radio app. Email us at thatotherkennedy@gmail.com if you would like to advertise with the program. If you have show topics, suggested guests, or questions for myself or Graham. What are the other big issues that you see either in the district or Commonwealth wide that if and or when you reach Harrisburg, you want to jump straight into after you are sworn in? There we have obviously the economic conundrum that the Commonwealth is in with a deficit that it's facing currently, between $5 and $6 billion as a result of COVID and the stay-at-home guidelines and requirements and requests from the administration, what it's done to businesses. There's that's staring us, dead in the face. We're looking at possibly a second serious spike as we head into winter. The CDC and Dr. Fauci have told us all that this could get quite ugly again in the winter. But you mentioned infrastructure. We talked a bit about the environment, green energy, fracking, and so on. What other, whether you choose to elaborate on those issues because perhaps we didn't get to speak about it enough, or is there something else? What's happening in the 5th that when you get there on day one, you want to open up the office and say, okay, folks, let's get to work on this?
Yep, I definitely think first and foremost, and it's on top of everybody's minds in the entire world, is healthcare. And unfortunately, a lot of Pennsylvanians still don't have coverage. There's over 600,000 people in our state. 600,000 people in our state in the middle of a global pandemic that's taking lives every single day that don't have healthcare coverage. So my first and foremost priority is taking care of our people. If you're not alive, none of the issues really matter. So making sure that everybody has a right to be alive, right to healthcare coverage, and making sure that they're covered would be first and foremost priority. And that would be something that the federal government hasn't taken care of. It's an issue that the federal government has sort of pushed away from. They want to actually take away Obamacare, and it's something that it's mainly been a federal issue until now. And I think we need to take it to the state legislature. There's so many people that say, I want to push this up. This is the president's issue. This is Congress's issue. This needs to be our issue because our people aren't covered and it's not getting taken care of at the federal level. So we need to make sure that there's universal health care in the state of Pennsylvania. We need to set up panels to sort of regulate prescription drug prices so that somebody can't charge you for a 5,000% profit, something that should be fairly easy to get with minimal copay. We need to make sure that people are covered, and it needs to be done immediately. It should have been done yesterday. It should have been done already, but now I think people are going to open their eyes and be more receptive to pushing that legislation through, considering the fact that every single person is at risk. Every single one of our districts in this state is affected by COVID. And unless people are covered, there's still 600,000 people that are going to be at risk of not being able to pay for the vaccine, say, or not being able to go into a hospital or get the test if they think that they have COVID, and then they might spread it to other people. I mean, it has so many effects statewide and especially in our district that we need to take care of it. Another issue that's not being addressed, and it's quite frankly long overdue, is raising the minimum wage. The idea that we don't have a mandated $15 minimum wage is absurd. Most small businesses are already paying that or more. It's the large corporations, the people who are opening up warehouses, manufacturing plants that are saying, no, you're going to make do with $7 or $8 here or there. It's absolutely not a livable wage. When you need to work 100+ hours in a manual labor job in order to afford a home, or to afford to pay for the healthcare that your company is already not providing you, or to pay to put your kid through school, or to pay just to put food, basic food on the table, it's absolutely unacceptable. We need a minimum wage of $15 per hour. In addition to that, I think I've already elaborated on this earlier, and I'll say it again. We need to protect workers' rights. We need to make sure that it's very easy for them to unionize. We need to make sure that they're not getting screwed out of their wages. We need to make sure that their workplaces are ensuring their safety and their protection. And we need to make sure that if they're working more than 8 hours in a 24-hour period, they're getting overtime. They shouldn't have to work, a 16-hour day and not see overtime in a 16-hour workday. And I also think the next issue is a very big bipartisan one that both Republicans and Democrats can agree on, and that's property tax. It's a hot button issue. It's something that unfairly burdens, say, senior citizens who are trying to just live off of their retirement savings, their pensions, their 401ks, and they're paying absurdly high property taxes. Not to mention that property taxes, since they're at the local level, make disparate educational opportunities across school districts. One student going to Wyomissing might get a different educational opportunity than a student going to Conrad Weiser High School. And so we need to make sure that we have a fair funding formula so that across the board in our entire state, every child has access to a great educational opportunity. These are the people who are going to be, innovators, teachers, doctors, the people who are going to be the new state representatives, the new governors. These are the students that we need to invest in so that we have long-term stability in our state. And I think those are the issues that are going to matter most going forward. Those are the issues that matter most right now on our doorstep. And I think we need to address them, and I will address them as state representative.
Can I ask you to speak about the if this virus has lain so many things bare in our nation and inside the Commonwealth. And for those of you on Facebook or 101 who are listening outside the Commonwealth, it has done the same for you as well. Graham and I can only speak about the Commonwealth because that is where we live. But for those of you on Facebook or 101 who might be listening in Texas or Virginia or California, or if you are listening in Australia or in South America, Central America, where we have listeners as well, this virus pandemic, this has lain so many things bare for us. But I want to, about the inadequacy of our for-profit health system generally, its lack of preparation because preparation is not profitable, the inequality of it, the lack of access to it. I could go through quite a list, but one thing that obviously has cropped up since Friday, can you speak to, just perhaps it's just your personal opinion or whatever you wish to share, can you speak to the the drowning levels of irony that the current occupant of the White House, who is using the full power of his regime in federal court to strip 40 million Americans of health coverage while he receives free and the finest health coverage available on the planet?
I think there's a deep irony, especially because the free health coverage that he's receiving from our finest doctors in a military hospital is all paid for from the tax dollars of the people he's trying to strip healthcare from. And it goes back to my point of my opponent and the people in our state legislature basically taking that healthcare coverage, taking those salaries, and then trying to deny those exact things from the people they say they want to represent. It's laden with irony. It's something that's absolutely wrong. And I hope that the voters see in this election cycle that that's what's happening and that they need to vote Trump out. They need to vote my opponent out. They need to put people in who are going to care about them, who are going to push their issues. Yes, you may not agree with every single platform issue that I might have or that Joe Biden might have, but we're not going to sit there and say, I'm going to let you die in the middle of a pandemic. And that should be a baseline for how you look at somebody. Are they going to treat you with a base level of human respect to say, I recognize you as an American, I recognize you as a Pennsylvanian, I recognize you as my neighbor, I recognize you as somebody who deserves to be alive, who deserves to be taken care of, who deserves to be able to walk into a hospital and not, lose your home over the payment that you're going to have to pay. You should be able to be somebody who can go about your life and not worry about life-threatening things.
267-227-9189 is the phone number for the program. You can ask your questions of Graham Gonzales, of myself, or both of us, or you can just, tell me how great I am. I'll take it. It's okay. No, I'll be humble. You can tell me. 267-227-9189. Among the couple of things that you mentioned was property taxes. I kind of want to jump on that one a little bit. And within that, an actual true fair funding formula in the Commonwealth. Folks in the party opposite like to talk about that we have a fair funding formula for schools inside the Commonwealth. Of course, that only means new monies that enter the system after the fair funding formula was passed. So really that only affects, I believe it is 9% of all those dollars that are spent on education, which means that all of the original inadequacies, inequities are still built into the system. Governor Wolf, about 5 years ago, talked about raising the income tax and raising the sales tax as a method for eliminating the property tax as a method for funding schools. He was laughed at, shot down, screamed at as a traditional quote unquote tax and spend liberal. And lo and behold, here we are 5 years later, and Republicans are running around the Commonwealth screaming about their plan to eliminate property taxes. And oh my goodness, what a shocker. It includes raising the income tax and the property tax. No irony there, I'm sure. What an wonderfully original and imaginative idea. Here's the catch, Graham, as I see it. You can disagree as much as you wish, and of course you may agree or you may not. Their plan happens to actually increase taxes and the burden on the bottom 99%. It again allows the largest corporations and the richest in the Commonwealth to again walk away scot-free. And again, as I stated, increases the burden on the bottom 99%. They would actually pay more money through that income tax and sales tax, and an increase in different and various fines, fees, and so on and so on. A, do you agree? B, what would be your plan to deal with removing property taxes as the main funding source for schools and education within inside the Commonwealth?
So to answer your first question, I absolutely disagree with the idea. I agree with the structure of raising both the sales tax and the income tax. I disagree with the manner in which Republicans are trying to go about it in terms of raising taxes on the average Pennsylvanian, in terms of burdening people who are already burdened with taxes and just trying to live their day-to-day lives. How I would go about it is raising the income tax only on the highest income earners in Pennsylvania, on the 1%. We have plenty of billionaires in our state who are raking in that money, taking in tax breaks, probably like Trump, only paying $750 in income tax. And the point is that, yes, they are very successful. They've chosen their fields and they found a lot of success. But the reason why they did was because somebody, some point in their life, invested in their progress. And it's now time for them to give back and invest in our students' progress so that we have new innovators, new people in the future, new leaders who are able to take those leaps, who are confident in themselves, who are given the resources to learn and grow. And it's time for them to give back. So yes, I do agree in increasing the income tax, but only on the highest income earners, the 1% in Pennsylvania. And I would also agree to help cover those costs and an increase in the sales tax, but not for everyday items like food items that every Pennsylvania needs, but for higher price items that, again, the highest income earners are going to pay for. And so I think by targeting or helping and asking the wealthiest among us to sort of contribute and shoulder that burden for school taxes, to pay for education funding for our public schools is a long-term investment, especially if you're a wealthy business owner in Pennsylvania. Your workers are going to be the people who went to our public educational system, the people who went to, Conrad Weiser High School, the people who went to Penn State University, the people who are graduating with those degrees. So it's also an investment in the long-term success of your workforce. These are the people who are going to be working in your company, the people who are going to be succeeding you as CEO eventually one day. So, I mean, again, it's one of those things where we need to invest in the long-term success. A lot of the wealthiest people, a lot of the CEOs are going to be looking for the short-term gains so that they can get their payouts in their short 5 to 10 year tenure. But what they need to be, what we as the government officials need to be looking at is the long-term, the 50, the 100-year, the 150-year time span of the success of our workforce, of our people, and of our educational systems.
So PA does have a flat income tax rate. You would then be, and I'm asking just to be clear because I'm learning along with you.
Yeah.
You would be in favor of breaking that flat tax in order to, or are we looking at possibly an excise tax, President Carter in the 70s instituted a windfall profits tax? Are we looking at an Elizabeth Warren style wealth tax? on those top folks in this property tax idea, or elimination of the property tax idea from your point of view? Again, you have the economics degree. I'm asking how do we do that? Are we breaking this flat tax system? Are we reinstituting tiers, a progressive tax system? How are we going about it? I know we're getting a little bit into the weeds, but I'm asking you, in your opinion, how are we breaking it? Or I shouldn't say breaking the system. Maybe that's a wrong way to phrase it. How are we reintroducing equity into the system? If we're going to have to raise the income tax, which I think everyone is universally in agreement on, we're eliminating this entire classification of tax system. The money's going to have to come from somewhere. Even the bottom of income earners are going to pay, but they're not going to pay any property tax anymore. So the money's going to come from somewhere. But if we're going to try to reintroduce equality back into the system somewhere, or equity, no, equity is not the right word. It would be equality. It would be the proper word. If we're going to try to reintroduce equality back into the system, and we have a flat tax, how do we do that?
No, you're absolutely right. And it's a good point you make. I absolutely support a progressive tax. Paying a flat tax affects everybody differently. And people think just because if you're worth $1 billion and you're paying, say, 10% tax, it's a bigger chunk, but it also means less to you. If you're only making $30,000, $40,000 a year and you're paying a 10% tax, that's a big chunk of your income that needs to go towards paying for the healthcare your company's not giving you, paying to put food on the table for your children, paying to give them supplies in this virtual environment during COVID that they don't have and that schools aren't able to fund because we don't have the funds, because you live in a district that's lower income in general and local property taxes pay for it. So your child doesn't have access to a laptop. So virtual learning becomes either not possible or incredibly hard for them. So absolutely, we need a progressive tax bracket and schedule in the state of Pennsylvania. The people who are raking in the most money, the people who have found the most success, should be giving back to our students. Again, I'll say it again for those in the back. The people who are the wealthiest in our state had somebody invest in them at some point. Somebody decided to take them under their wing and say, I'm going to help you out, whether it was their family, whether it was a teacher, whether it was somebody in an extracurricular. They decided that they wanted to help them out, and it's time for them to help out our students too.
I'm stealing that. I'm warning you right now. So when you listen to the show next week and you hear me say, once again, for everyone in the back, you'll know I'm stealing it. I'm just saying it to you right now, just so no copyrights. I'm stealing that right away. Let me hit that again. Let me do. This program is in part a radio program for all of our folks who might be on Facebook but are doing things in the background and not watching. Even though I do have this is actually when I should be using the whiteboard. And for our sisters and brothers on Hot 101 who are listening audio only, and it's a little difficult to keep up from just an audio point of view. When we're talking about a flat tax, let me build on what you mentioned. You're worth $1 billion, you pay 10%. That's 100 million.
Yep.
Yes, it's 100 million. Watch him do math in his head, folks. You might see smoke. If you're not watching on Facebook, you should turn to the screen now, because you may see smoke and you might be hearing the gears grind. It might get fun in a minute. I'll give myself a cramp. I might drop, live on the air. You got 900 million left. What I'm trying to illustrate is the point that Graham just made. It doesn't mean the same to you. One of the arguments for the flat tax is, well, it's equal for everybody. They all get to pay the same percentage. If you only make $10,000, and I got news for you, folks, there's people inside the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania who only make $10,000. 10% is $1,000. That $1,000 means the world to you. It means the world to you. And especially when you go back to when President Reagan started taxing again your earned benefits. Social Security never used to be taxed. He changed that. Unemployment benefits never used to be taxed because you paid taxes on them before. You paid taxes on them when they went in. You're now double taxed on them. If you only earn $10,000, and I'm doing it a little bit to make the math easy on myself so I literally don't start gushing from my ears and nose as I try to do math live on the air. If you're living on $10,000, that $1,000, you need every penny of that just to stay alive. So $100 million, a billion, 10%, 100 million sounds like a massive amount of money to pay in taxes. And it's a damn good chunk of money. If someone handed it to you in an envelope, you'd take it. And you'd be damn happy to take it. But you still got 900 million left behind you. That's an even bigger chunk of money. This is the point we're trying to make. If you make 100,000, 10%, 10,000, you got 90,000 left. That makes you a legislator in PA. That's a good chunk of money. You're still doing okay. This is the bedeviling little detail inside of a flat tax that we need to think about. Yes, according to the math, it's equal. But it's not equal. It doesn't mean the same thing to everyone. Because when you're at the bottom, it's a bigger percentage of what it means to your daily life. Would you agree with that assessment, Graham?
Absolutely. I mean, it's again, it's all proportional to the income that you make. People think that a flat tax rate, everybody's giving the same portion of their income. Well, some people can't afford to give a portion of their income because they're barely getting by. Because again, some of the wealthiest people are not paying them fair wages, and they're extracting that value and then only paying the same portion of their income when, again, to your example, if somebody has $1 billion and they pay 100 million, they still have $900 million. It doesn't affect their day-to-day life unless they're trying to buy like 20 super yachts, which they shouldn't be doing in the first place. Nobody should be able to do that. And the point being is that, yes, people at the lower income brackets, especially if you're only making $20, $30, $40,000 a year, you should be paying minimal, if zero, taxes to the state. The people who are pulling in hundreds of millions of dollars a year need to be paying their fair share. And they also need to be paying better wages so that people aren't only pulling in $20,000 a year.
Is there a way to make the sales tax more equitable?
Yes, and it would probably come in the form of something that looks more like a luxury tax. So higher priced items are taxed at very high level. So again, if you do want to buy that very nice boat or a very high priced car or something to that effect, you are taxed very heavily on it, so that the state pulls in those taxes. But we should absolutely not be increasing the sales tax on anything that's an everyday item. You shouldn't be increasing the sales tax on food, things like water, anything that any average Pennsylvanian is going to be buying in the course of their regular life, because that affects them deeply. And again, that's something that's taxes that they can't afford. So it should be on higher price items in which they're luxury goods. They're things that, aren't necessary for day-to-day life, but wealthier Pennsylvanians do buy. And they're going to continue to buy even if we tax them at higher rates. They're just going to end up paying more of their fair share to help out the students in our state.
So again, to possibly make it oversimplistic, if I want to go buy a car, I'm a member of that bottom 99% economically, or to break it down perhaps even further, if I'm the bottom 20% economically, and a brand new car is not even a passing thought for me. I'm literally going to the used car lot. Or if I'm lucky enough that I can buy something new, but I'm going to, the Hyundai or Kia lot, and someone who's the CEO, board of director, EVP of a fossil fuel company, I'm going to the Aston Martin lot. The sales tax is the same. So it's we're sort of talking about the same kind of thing here, where it's hitting each person disproportionately. the person at the Kia lot and the person at the Aston Martin lot are paying the same sales tax, but it's hitting each one disproportionately. It means a hell of a lot more to the person laying everything out on the line to get that Kia than it is the guy who's buying an Aston Martin. And you believe that we can make that more equitable by means of a luxury tax or an excise tax or something along those lines. If you pay
Absolutely.
above a certain amount of money or a certain make model, something like that, we can make that a bit more equitable.
Yeah, if you're going to buy a used car for say $20,000, $15,000, you should be paying minimal sales tax, because that might be something that you need to share with, your partner, with your children. It might be a one car for a 4-person family, and you got to drive your kids to school in it, drive you and your partner to different jobs in it. You got to make it work. The schedules are tight, and it's just this one car that you paying for, and then you can't even afford that $15,000-$20,000 up front. So you're paying your monthly payments. You're living month to month to pay that car, versus somebody who's dropping, 6 figures, $100,000 on a car. They should be paying their fair share, because again, that's probably like their 3rd or 5th car for like a 2-person household. That's something that they need to be taxed on because it's a luxury good item. It's just a nice to have for them. It's not a necessity. They already have what they need. So they should be shouldering the burden of the tax.
Folks, for everyone listening, wherever you're listening, these tax ideas are ideas that we've done before in this country. They're not new ideas. They're ideas that have been crushed and discredited and removed from the system in this country. 40 years of Reaganism and Reaganomics and trickle down and all of this crap, really, that has been hoisted upon us and told that if we just give all the money to the folks at the top, it'll trickle down. They'll share it with us. Well, they have not. They never did. They will not. They're not going to. They haven't from the beginning. That's not going to change. These tax ideas that Graham and I are discussing are not new. We've done them before. I have said it on this program. I say it every week. I would hope, I wouldn't hope necessarily, but if you are with me every week, you have heard this countless times. We've done this before. Our economy was the largest, most pro-growth, most successful, largest middle class from the New Deal up to 1980 in the history of the planet. Largest middle class, largest peacetime economy. People got rich. People got super rich. Some of the largest multinational corporations in the history of the planet were created during the New Deal. We can do this again. These policies and programs and legislation that Graham is talking about will not destroy entrepreneurism. They will not destroy businesses. They will not destroy corporations, because they have not before at any other time where they were instituted. And these are policies that are in place everywhere else on earth. This is the only place we can do these things. We've done them before. We've done them before, and we're still here. I swear to you, everybody, there was the United States in 1979. I promise. I promise. The history of the country did not start on January 20th, 1980. 81. I promise. I promise. We were here before that. President Carter put solar panels on the roof of the White House. The roof did not collapse. The sun did not run away and hide. I promise. There was a United States before that. I promise you. These are policy issues. We can disagree on them. That's fine. But the facts are what they are. The history is what it is. We are entering our third hour, if you can believe it. I'm waiting for Graham to run away and hide and scream in horror, but we're entering our third hour. He's still here with us. This is the Kennedy Effect for October 2020. The 4th of October 2020. We're in our final month before Election Day. Wherever you're with us on Facebook, that other side of information is where you can enter your comments and questions, and we will see them. The phone line is open, 267-227-9189, 267-227-9189. For everyone at hot101.net, thank you for being with us yet again. That other Kennedy at gmail.com for your advertisements or show questions, contributions, etc., etc. I want to get to the minimum wage that you mentioned, Graham, because I think it ties in actually with property taxes, because if we're going to replace the property tax as a main funding for schools, you need to be able to pay the other taxes that are going to replace it. And you can't do that if you're not earning anything. COVID put me out of work back in March. I have yet to find anything. And one thing that my job search has taught me is that I am stunned. It's been stunning to see what wages folks are willing to accept and what they actually consider to be a good wage. And to be honest, what some businesses are paying and look at you in the interview process as if they're somehow doing you a favor. I mean, I've sat in some of these interviews and they go through a job description for a job that I did 20 years ago, making, the same money I was making today, actually, and say, yep, and that's a $12 job, as if they're somehow proud and doing me a favor. I mean, what we've done...
That's unfortunately the reality.
Yeah. I mean, what 40 years of Reaganism have done to this country is almost difficult to understand and comprehend, I think. Can you speak a little bit, especially from the economics background that you have, what a minimum wage does to set the floor and what it does to bring equity, to restore, restore a balance? I mean, I've argued on this program every single week that it's the folks that make that minimum wage that drive an economy. It's not the Jeff Bezoses of the world that drive an economy. He's worth $200 billion. If $1 billion fell out of his pocket, he wouldn't even notice it for months. But if you're making 15, if you're making 12 and you get bumped up to 15, that extra money and what you spend it on and where you spend it, that's what drives an economy. Because you might go to Tony's Pizza or Mary's Flower Shop or Susan's Card and Gift and spend that extra $3, or that might be the $10 that you can give your child to do the field trip or whatever it might be. And then that money that you spend at Mary's, Mary then spends on the vendor to fill her shop back up. And then that vendor can spend that money on what. That's what drives an economy. Am I wrong?
No, you're absolutely not wrong. And a lot of people try and push the idea that if you raise the minimum wage, it's going to put entrepreneurs out of business. It's going to put small businesses out of work. And it's absolutely not true. Small businesses, because you're already working with people that the owner of a small business might employ 10 people. These 10 people, the CEO of the small business hired all of them. He might know all of them personally. And that's the idea, is that they pay them fair wages because they understand them. They know them. They're part of their community. They work directly alongside of them. And then as you get to larger and larger corporations that might be public companies or just a very large privately held company, the CEO doesn't interact with their 20,000 employees. And so there's a little bit of a disconnect. So it becomes the people don't become people. They don't work with them day to day. The people become numbers on a balance sheet. They become numbers to squeeze out profit from. And so they lower their wages. And the idea of a minimum wage is saying, you can't pay people below this wage. And it's something that's been prevalent in capitalism since the beginning of capitalism, because otherwise people recognize that, hey, I can actually pay people slave wages, and for people who are starving, making $5 an hour is a lot better than making $0 an hour. And so that it basically, especially like a time now during COVID, when people are out of work, when they've been looking for months, when you're between a rock and a hard place, if there was no minimum wage, companies would take advantage of that and say, hey, I know that you need money, and I'm going to pay you next to nothing to do a job for 60 hours a week. And you're going to accept it because you're between a rock and a hard place. And that's the point where the government's job is to step in and say, hey, absolutely not. You're not going to take advantage of workers like that. You're going to pay them a minimum of $15 per hour. And guess what? It's not going to affect small companies and local businesses because they're already paying their workers a rightful wage because they work with them. They treat their workers as human beings because they're there shoulder to shoulder in the shop. If you own a pizza shop and you got 10 employees, the CEO of that company is right there next to you making pizza. They might be taking a little bit more profit, but you know what? They're going to be paying their worker $15, $20 an hour because they treat them as a human being. The CEO of a company with 20,000 people wants his $10 million paycheck. So he wants to pay them $7 an hour. And it's our job as government representatives to step in and say, hey, absolutely not. You're going to treat them as a human being. You're going to give them healthcare coverage. You're going to give them a pension or a 401k, and you're going to pay them a fair wage.
But that ripple again, forgive me if I'm hammering on this a little bit, but the pizza shop owner that you referenced, doesn't that then ripple through the economy? Because while he may have to pay, he or she, to be fair, may have to pay their employees, their 8 employees, they may have to bump them up to $15 from wherever it was that they were previously. All of the other shops are doing the same thing. So whereas I maybe could not or would not go into that pizza shop and splurge on lunch once a week or twice a week, maybe now I can. And that money's coming back. So yeah, I'm paying out that extra money, and I might and I might really grumble and kick and scream and not be happy about it. But how many more people are coming through my door to have lunch, to have a slice and a soda for lunch, or a sub, and instead of doing it maybe once a month, maybe now they do it once a week. And that money's coming through. I think we tend to forget about how that money ripples through an economy. When Seattle elected several Democratic Socialists onto its city council, despite massive spending from Amazon, by the way, and Boeing, did I miss something? Did Seattle collapse and fall into the Puget Sound and disappear as a city? No, its local economy went through the roof because the city became literally awash in money. And it's exactly what happened. The people who were making whatever their original minimum wage was, and I apologize that I don't know what it started at. Someone can tell me in the chat, or heaven forbid, somebody could actually call the phone line, for goodness sakes, that it went from whatever it was, and I want to say that it was 8 something, but I could be wrong.
It's usually 7 to 9 range.
Right. And then went to 15, and the city was literally awash in money. And there were jobs created all over the place. And that person working at the pizza shop did go from 8 to 15. But then that person then took that money and spent it.
And it's the biggest lie that
through the
our
economy
country's been told, is the idea that all of a sudden, if we lower taxes on the wealthiest in large corporations, that billionaires are going to spend that money and it's going to trickle down. I've got to be frank with you. The billionaire's not stopping in a pizza shop. He's going to a 5-star restaurant that costs like $5,000 a plate. That's not the kind of person. That money doesn't trickle down. But if you do give money to the broader population, if you do raise the wages of our workers who make up the majority of America, it does trickle through across to businesses, because those are the people who are stopping in your shop. The guy who lives down the street, not the billionaire who lives on a private island.
Well, when did we forget the lesson of Henry Ford? That I can't make a product when the other oligarchs and the other monopolies came to Ford and said, you can't price your product that low. You're going to put the rest of us out of business. And he said to them, I can't make a product that my own workers can't afford. When did we lose that lesson? And the second lesson would be, when in the history of man, anywhere, the United States, ancient Rome, the British Empire, anywhere in the history of man, did it work that when all the wealth was concentrated at a tiny few at the top, did any of those societies survive? Because none of them did. None. Ancient Egypt, Rome, Greece, the British Empire, name them. None. And from an economic standpoint, after 40 years, and if you want to get back into Nixon, where it kind of began with the opening up of China, this is what we're looking at. It's the fall of the Roman Empire from an economic standpoint. We're doing it again. This doesn't work. We did this in the late 1800s, the first Gilded Age, before the Great Depression, and a massive sweep into progressive policies, spreading the money. That was the whole idea of the New Deal. The corporations, these big companies, these monopolies and trusts won't employ you. Well, then the heck with them. I will employ you. I, being Roosevelt. The government will employ you. We will put money directly into your hands. You will work. Yes, you will work. But we will put money into your hands so you can feed yourself, clothe yourself, house yourself, and that money rippled through the economy. It's very simple. I do not understand, and I don't have the economics degree you do, but what am I missing? When did this become such a dirty idea? Where did we lose our way here?
Well, again, it goes back to the idea that the people who have that wealth have an incentive, a personal incentive from a game theory standpoint, to maximize profits, squeeze as much out from the workers as you can, and get a bigger paycheck. And then when that CEO or that founder becomes a billionaire, they funnel back a portion of their profits that they're not paying in taxes into super PACs, into candidates. They're basically buying a rigged political system so that they can make more money. They ensure that the minimum wage isn't raised, and they basically put out disinformation campaigns to say, hey, if you raise the minimum wage, you're going to be the ones who hurt. We're going to lay you off. We're not going to give you jobs. It's basically saying, big business saying, I'm going to fire you if you vote for somebody who dares to raise your wage, or your small business is going to go out of business and you're going to have to go, collect unemployment because they've raised the minimum wage. And they're all fallacies. They're all lies. But obviously the people at the very top have an incentive to push those because it raises their income, it raises their net worth, and quite frankly, it means that they have direct control of our political system, our workers, our day-to-day lives. It basically makes them oligarchs. It basically it destroys our democracy, and it turns us into something that's more of an oligarchy.
The media, they have the media to blow the Trump, no pun intended, to trumpet that message. But again, I know I use Bezos as the example all the time because he's the most obvious one. He's literally the richest man on earth. He has more money than the gross domestic products of, I believe it is now 75% of the nations on earth. He's worth over $200 billion. Again, he could sneeze, drop $1 billion on the street and not notice, not even notice, not know it, not know anything. Another billion to him, 2 billion, 5 billion, 10 billion. Hell, 50 billion, wouldn't notice. When you get 200, but you couldn't spend 200 billion. You couldn't. The New York Mets just sold for $2.5 billion. Bezos could buy all of Major League Baseball in one fell swoop. He could buy all 32 teams and still have money left over. I mean, this is what we're talking about. But yet, here's a man who will intimidate, bully, fire employees because they want to have a union, because they want to earn. Now, he's recently and was only recently shamed into starting to pay workers $15. 20,000 of his workers nationwide got COVID. And some of them got fired when they didn't show up to work because they got sick. And he had to be shamed just to get up to 15. And he fought that every step of the way. Every single step of the way.
Enough is never enough with them.
And that's the thing. You know, we think about some of these older movies, maybe from the 40s and 50s, of these medieval knight movies, and you see the fat king with a table full of food, and you would think, how could he ever eat all that while the rest of the population starves? It's the same thing. It's the same thing. There's an allegory here that I've used before on the program, if you're familiar with the program, that if the wealth inequality situation that we find ourselves in now, let's take our brains and try to reorient it a bit and say it's not money but food. Think about the richest 4 people in the United States having as much food as the bottom 160 million people in the United States. Can you imagine what would be happening on the streets? It would be the second French Revolution. It would be pull out the guillotines. It would be torches, pitchforks, and clubs. They would be storming the gates. Why aren't we storming the gates? Figuratively speaking, no one on earth, I do not want anyone storming the gates. I do not want violent protest by any means. I want you to storm the voting booth.
Yeah. Well, the system's designed to keep them from doing that. The reason why is we don't have a national election day. People have to work during that time. So companies purposefully put people to work so they can't get out there and vote. People can't go out there and protest peacefully, to your analogy, and basically say, hey, pay us more, because guess what? If they go out and protest, they're going to lose their job. And even if you do get the legislation passed through, it might be a year from the moment you protest. And guess what? If you're out protesting and miss your day of work, you're going to get fired. How are you going to live for the next year until that legislation goes through? It's that sort of short-term pain that companies and CEOs and founders can put on you that keeps people from coming to the streets, coming to the voting booth, because the system is designed to keep them from speaking up, from voicing their concerns.
You understand that my point?
Absolutely.
It would be, I mean, we would never allow such a thing. You would never allow 4 people to hold themselves up on their estates behind iron gates with guards and hoard food like that from 160 million people. Why do we allow them to hoard wealth? I mean, it makes no sense. It makes no sense to me. I don't understand it for to save my life. I truly don't. We've never been this way. Not since the Gilded Age. And again, we were a fundamentally different country then. We didn't have the ability for you and I to communicate right now and to speak literally to the entire planet. It did not exist. The literacy rates, the transportation, that didn't exist. We were a fundamentally different country. You had folks literally didn't know how bad it was. Now you can sit in front of a device, type in a couple of keystrokes, and realize the depth of the problem. and we continue to sit back and not do it. And I don't understand it. I truly do not understand why we allow this to happen. It doesn't make any sense to me. I really don't. I don't get it. You also mentioned, and this ties into the minimum wage too, workers' rights. This is something that I believe a state can do something more about without national, outside of the national government, because we see these quote unquote right to work states and right to work laws in different states. Pennsylvania is not a right to work state. If I'm correct, you will hopefully correct me if I'm wrong. What can a Commonwealth like Pennsylvania do to protect workers from the, you are lucky enough to win you are fortunate enough, the voters trust you, they choose you, you go to Harrisburg to start, and what is it that you are able to do to protect workers inside the Commonwealth? What would you do?
Yeah. So one of the big things, and one of the big, especially for my district, since we do have a lot of manufacturing jobs and whatnot, one of the big things that those companies rely on is government contracts. Funny enough as it might be that they don't want to pay their workers or give them rights, they're taking a lot of money from the taxpayers for those contracts that the state desperately needs to, say, repair a bridge or a road. And so one of the easiest things you can do as a state representative is ensure that not a single one of those contracts goes to a company that's doesn't put up the right protections for their workers, that doesn't pay their workers minimum wage, that doesn't allow their workers to unionize, that isn't following the right safety protocols for their workers. You basically cut off the money stream from the government to them and say, hey, until you get yourself in check, we're not giving you a single dime of the taxpayers' money until you treat your workers right. Another thing you can do is push through regulation and set up oversight boards to make sure that we have officials walking through those factories and those warehouses and saying, is the safety protocols up to snuff? Are they following the laws that we have passed? Because it's very easy to pass legislation and say, hey, we have X, Y, and Z protocols put into place for you to protect workers and their health in any given warehouse or any given factory to make sure that accidents are lower and that their health is being watched, But the law doesn't have teeth until you set up oversight boards and officials that will regularly go through and check on the spot without warning factories and warehouses and make sure that companies are following it. You need to give laws teeth, and giving them teeth means sending out officials to enforce it. And outside of that even is making sure that it's illegal for companies to stop workers from unionizing. That's a very base idea, but companies try and do it all the time. They say, hey, if we even hear a whisper of you trying to organize, we'll fire you all and we'll replace you tomorrow. And we should stop them from doing that and say, hey, workers are free to organize the same way that average American citizens are able to free to organize and assemble outside and protest the government and protest companies and protest anything. Your workers should be free to organize, unionize, and collectively bargain together. And you should not be able to fire every single one of them just because they decided to demand their rights.
I did actually look it up. Well, I needed to make sure that I was right. I wanted to make sure that I did not put out any false information. I'm a human being. I get things wrong. People are kind enough that they will correct me on occasion in the interactive chat. I wanted to look up and make sure that I was giving every single one of you watching, listening, wherever it is that you're consuming the program, that I was giving you correct information. So I looked it up. Pennsylvania is not a right to work state or Commonwealth in this case. There are many. I'm going to read right what I found to you. Except for public utility employees and certain workers in the public sector, that would in all likelihood mean safety, public safety, troopers, probably state troopers and things like that. All Pennsylvania employees have the right to strike. Many states have the so-called right to work law, which is one of the beauties of the things that Republicans do. They name legislation the exact opposite of what it is meant to, of what it actually does. They'll name an act called the Blue Skies and Sunshine Act, and then it rains every day for the rest of eternity. Many states have the so-called right to work law that prohibits compulsory union membership. Pennsylvania is not among them. So Pennsylvania is not a right to work state. So I wanted to make sure that it was completely clear and correct about that. 7:30 on the eastern seaboard here in Pennsylvania, Saucon Valley, Lehigh Valley, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, United States, third rock from the sun in the Terran solar system here on planet Earth. Graham Gonzales continues to be with me, the Democratic nominee and candidate for the Pennsylvania House of Representatives from the 5th District. The phone line is open, 267-227-9189, 227-9189. He said it is also on the screen. For some reason, on my iPad where I monitor the video presentation of the show, it is immensely blurry. I hope it is not that way on your end. I am told by some other folks that are monitoring for me that it is not. So I hope it's not. I hope it's just on my end, and I can't tell you why it is that way. It probably has something to do with the way that Facebook has reoriented this screen, which is just annoying. I don't know why we have to change things that work. The old saying, if it ain't broke. But the comments section is all different now, and it's just, I don't know. But it is incredibly blurry on my end. I desperately hope it is not so on your end. Wherever you're watching on Facebook, that other side of information, the chat is there and open. It has been a very, very quiet chat tonight, probably just because Graham is overwhelming you with just wonderful information, not because I am, but because Graham is, and because you are staring at his leading man movie good looks. Hey, good. That means you're not looking at me, because there's nothing to see here. But the phone line is open. Our sisters and brothers at Hot 101, I know I've been mentioning it throughout the night, and I really do sincerely mean it. Go to the hot101.net new main website. It's been completely redesigned. It is very friendly and easy to use. It looks great. Have a look at it. You can also, of course, listen through there. The Apple App Store, Google Play Store for Android, the TuneIn Radio app. Email us at thatotherkennedy@gmail.com. Graham, tell me about, we were talking about workers' rights and unions and so on. In my opinion, unions, private sector workers, union participation entering the Reagan administration was about 37.5%. It is now under 6%. And going back to something that I had mentioned earlier, when I go on job interviews, and this is for management and supervisory jobs, by the way, not just not just push a broom jobs. And that's nothing for folks against, folks who push a broom. God bless you. You're employed and you're taking care of your families. God bless you. I'm glad. I'm talking about for sometimes high level management jobs. $12 an hour, $13, $14 an hour. And I get looked at like you'll be damn happy to take it. It seems to me that those two numbers go together. The fact that the population of union folks from from just under 38% down to under 6%, and the fact that, we're happy to interview you, sir, and you'll be damn happy to take $12. It's not a coincidence, those two things. What say you?
It goes back to what I mentioned a little bit before, is that it's this idea that with the minimum wage, with unions, that if companies know that you're between a rock and a hard place, they're going to do everything they can to squeeze as much value out of you as they can, because they know that you might not have another opportunity. There might not be another choice for you to make. And over time, especially in the Republican Party, but across, most governments at the state or even federal level, our rights for unions, the ability to regulate companies in respect to allowing workers to unionize, has been eroded away over the years, so that it becomes harder and harder for average workers in any given company to collectively bargain together, to unionize, to form a group where they can say, we demand more rights, better working conditions, better wages. And when they've sort of dismantled that, obviously the number of unions that are able to be formed, have decreased from in the 30% to, 6% or less. And it's basically shown that, yeah, wages have stagnated as well. And there's a reason. There's a reason they have stagnated, because who's going to fight for workers if not workers themselves? Obviously, they're the ones best suited to fight for themselves. And the companies and the higher ups and CEOs and the executive suite in a company are not going to be the ones to do it. It's going to have to be workers. And so if we don't protect those unions, then there's nobody fighting for them. And that's why minimum wage levels and wages in general have stagnated at average worker levels, because there's nobody advocating for them, because they're not allowed to collectively bargain together. And so it's all been part of a broader effort to extract as much value from workers in order to benefit the wealthy.
We've kind of skirted around it, I don't think intentionally, but we've kind of mentioned it here and there a little bit on the legislature itself and how it's been operating especially in the last 9-ish months or so. If you were already in office, if you had been in office from the beginning of this pandemic, what would you have done differently? You've been very clear about the fact that you will not be a cookie cutter for the party. I myself have said on occasion that I don't think the governor's waiver process was done equally. I think his communication with the people of the Commonwealth could be better, but I also think he has been a piñata for the Republican Party as well. I don't think they have done. I think they've just criticized everything he's done simply because he's the one that did it. What would you, if I could offer you perhaps a rather broad question, and I know it might be a little bit difficult to answer because it is exceptionally broad, what would you say, what would you have done differently? How would you have worked with the governor? What would your retort be to the Republicans about how the pandemic, its response, the policies, the stay-at-home requirements, the conditions that were asked of businesses, that were laid upon businesses? Tell me about Graham Gonzales and the pandemic. Had you been in office?
Absolutely. And I think with regards to the critiques that have been leveled at Wolf, I think the state government and the governor himself have done everything they can with the information they had available and the advice that they had to try to do their best in order to keep the state shut down, to keep Pennsylvanians safe. And for the Republican Party, it's very easy to criticize. It's very easy to criticize because if you're not putting forth any new legislation, if you're not governing, if you're not acting, it's very easy to level criticisms because you're doing nothing. You have no strategy of your own. You have no leadership role that you've taken of your own. It's very easy to sit back and yell at somebody when they're doing something and you're not. So it's very much so a coward's way out in terms of addressing the needs of the people. It's very much so playing politics, and I would never do it. If it was a Republican governor, I wouldn't be leveling those criticisms. I'd be saying, hey, if I disagree with you, I'm disagreeing with you because I believe there's a better plan of action. And here it is. And this is what I think you should take, rather than just sitting back and leveling criticisms while people are dying and not putting forward any plan to help them, because quite frankly, it just shows that they don't care. They don't care that people are dying. They just care about getting, cookie points, getting brownie points, saying that, yeah, you guys should level your hate at Wolf, not at us for not taking any action. So I absolutely disagree with that approach. Now, if I was a state legislator, if I was the representative when it had happened, I would have listened to public health officials. Even at our federal level, the president himself has routinely ignored or denied the science or the advice of officials. I'll be the first one to admit, I'm not a public health official. I'm not a doctor. I've not been trained in the policy of the general public's health, but we do have people in place for that. And immediately when something happens, and I do believe Governor Wolf tried his best to take the advice of our public health officials, I would have listened to the CDC, I would have listened to Fauci, I would have listened to our state government health officials, and we would have locked down the state. I would have put through bills in order to make sure that we kept essential services running, which we ended up doing. And I would have tried my best to make sure that we kept everybody safe, whether you're in a nursing home or you're just an average guy who's, postal work going house to house. I would have immediately put through funding for us to have widespread testing, because you can't really know the situation until people are tested. And if the federal government wasn't going to help, I think it was time for us to step in as the state government and say, hey, we're going to test and we're going to do contact tracing and make sure that we get it under control. Because this entire issue about the pandemic and how it's been mishandled has come from the fact that these things are often handled at the federal level. Well, our federal government and our president don't care. They told state governments, you're on your own. And when that happened, as a state representative, I would have said, I wouldn't have said, no, I'm going to wait and see how this plays out. I would have said, okay, you handed me the baton, I'm going to take it, because it's time for us to step up. Regardless of whether we expect it or not, it's time for us to say, hey, we're going to fund these tests. We're going to make sure that everybody has access to universal health coverage. We're going to push through contract tracing, and we're going to make sure that we get this under control so that we keep essential services running and we shut down the rest of the state for as small a time as possible so that we can get people back to work, so we can get the economy back up and running.
I think that basically sums it. I guess I can pretty much agree with that too. I do think he got some of the things wrong. I feel sorry for the local, not that there's a lot of them left, but I do feel sorry for the local hardware store when Home Depot and Lowe's is open. I feel sorry for the smaller grocer, the organic grocer, when Walmart and Target is open. The communications that came from, I know he had the daily briefings. I watched a lot of the daily briefings. I found them hard to follow, to be honest. But I'm not a scientist. Maybe that's why. I found the treatment of Dr. Levine to be barbaric, at a minimum, barbaric. And talk about low-hanging fruit. I mean, good God. But I found the daily briefings to be at times hard to follow and hard to distill into my brain, but I'm not a medical person. I do think his communications with the counties and municipalities, at least at the beginning, was not great. But again, I think you hit the nail on the head here, is that the criticisms were not followed with, you did A, we think you should be doing B. It was followed with, you did A and we hate you. And you suck for it. And you're a Democrat. And if you had actually had the power to take every person in the Commonwealth and tap them on the shoulder and cure them, we would still find something wrong with it, because you're a governor, and that would be big government interference. And that we would find something wrong with it. And really, no matter what you did, it was going to be wrong. We were going to hate it, and we were going to complain about it. I think that's the real problem, is just what you said. There's no alternative. There's no plan. There's no, just this last week, the bill that was going to yell and scream, and they got a lot of Democratic support with it, by the way, about allowing bars to increase capacity to 50% when the governor had already done that 3 days before. It's, you talk about tone deaf. But at the same time, again, I think his communication wasn't great either. I will say, though, I do think there was some where I do think some of the red counties had something to say when they had some of the counties, especially in the lesser and rural populated sections, had, cases that you could count on one hand, were kind of kicking and screaming and saying, we don't need to shut down like this. And they kicked and screamed enough that he finally said, fine, here's the red, yellow, green, and we'll move you through the process. And then we'll leave you to take care of yourselves. Then cases spiked. And then they complained that they weren't getting any help from him. So it kind of can't be both then, can it? And then he said, fine, you're green, you're on your own. Then cases went up, and then I was going to use the B word there. Then they complained that, hey, you got to help us. Cases are going up. Well, no. You kicked and screamed you wanted to be on your own. Now you're on your own. For all intent and purpose, I'm obviously condensing this communication back and forth. And the legislature, the Republican majority's only solution to all of this, after complaining that the governor would not speak to him, and I saw no evidence of that. I was not at the Capitol. I am not in the legislature. I am not in constant communication with legislators who will speak to me, and there are not many. Their remedy to the entire thing was to impeach the governor. And by the way, if you do not see the irony in that the impeachment of the president, who was impeached, was the overturning of a legal election, but that's okay, we'll impeach the governor, but that somehow was not the overturning of a legal election. When you're campaigning, regardless of how you're campaigning, I'm guessing that you have been met at some point with the question of the overall functioning and integrity of government. How do you answer to the integrity and functioning of government when, even as only a candidate, and I say only because not that that's nothing, but I think you understand what I'm getting at.
Absolutely.
But when you are only the candidate, you are not the incumbent, you are not the office holder. How do you answer to the functioning and integrity of government when you have to even passively answer for that circus? Or the PA legislature, which occasionally descends into nothing other than a sideshow and a circus. I mean, again this week, we had another Republican member who knew they had COVID-19 and continued to show up and work and didn't tell anybody.
Well, the president did it. So, I mean, they all just follow his lead. They're all very much his little minions. And if he does it, then they feel fine to do it. And it's unfortunate.
You do unfortunately have to answer for that circus on occasion because you're running to be a part of it.
Yeah.
You're running to hopefully bring a higher level to it and fix it, but you sort of have to answer for it. I'm assuming someone has said something to you somewhere along the way in this campaign to say, government stinks, it's terrible, it doesn't work, it doesn't do anything, it can't function right. This is, again, a 40-year message that we got from Reagan, that government doesn't work. We all know that famous line, yeah. I'm here from the government, government is not here to fix your problems, it is the problem, which is crap. But that's what rich people want you to believe, by the way. It's why they fear government, because it is the only power that can restrain them. How do you answer for government when you are forced to do so or asked to do so? How do you defend the institution of government?
So you're absolutely right. A lot of people have asked about it. A lot of people are just done with it. A lot of people don't want to vote. A lot of people don't think that it matters. A lot of people are pushing the idea, and it's very understandable that, the government hasn't done anything for me in my lifetime. What are you going to do to change it? And the response has to be just blatant honesty. Yeah. A lot of the people, if you represent me, that I work with are still going to maintain that level of laissez-faire government where they don't regulate businesses. They don't legislate to help you out. They're still owned and bought by their party or corporations. But the message that I keep trying to push is, even if the other couple hundred people in that house don't believe in you, I do. And I'm never going to abandon you. And even if they're not pushing through bills that are going to help you, they're going to raise your bottom line. They're going to ensure that you're covered with healthcare, to ensure that you can, afford that picket fence, to afford the American dream, that you're fairly compensated, that you're allowed to unionize. I'm always going to push those bills. And eventually, if more and more people do this, more people like me will come through the ranks, and we'll eventually have a government that works. It's not a one day, it's not an overnight sensation. It starts with one person, then there's a second person, and then eventually the majority is represented. but it's, again, not an overnight thing. So the thing that I try and tell people is, yes, it's going to be a pain. It's going to take years. It's going to be hard to take people out, but this is the same with everything. Whether you're building a corporation, whether you're an entrepreneur starting a business, whether you're trying to go into government and make change, anything that's worthwhile to do is going to be hard, and it's going to be a long-term goal.
It took 40 to 50 years to get us here. I don't think it has to take us 40 to 50 years to fix it. But it took, because the New Deal did not take 40 to 50 years to institute, but it took us 40 to 50 years to get here. And it can be fixed. Folks, I maintain, I believe Graham will agree with me. He is welcome to disagree with me. Government is broken, but it's broken because someone broke it. It is not broken because it was constructed incorrectly. It is broken because it was intentionally broken. And you can fix what is broken. It was broken by being defunded intentionally, starved of funding, and it was broken by just the wrong people being there, by people who do not want government to work, who do not want government to function. The easiest thing, I have told you all this story before, the very first things that Mr. Reagan did when he took power is he put Bill Bennett in charge of the Department of Education. One of the very first things Bill Bennett did was to eliminate the teaching of civics in schools. Because if you do not know how your government functions, you cannot complain when it doesn't work. And if you do not know how it works, you are much less likely to be engaged in it and much less likely to ever have understood how it worked in the first place, so that when rich people and the party opposite us tells you, this place is a mess, can't help you. It's not designed to help you. You don't know any better. Luckily for Graham, being a young man of movie star good looks, he's been to school. And even though he has been born and grown in only a post-Reagan America, still knows better. It's a small thing called history. The wonderful thing about these devices is the sum total of all of human history is right in front of you. There's more computing power in this old iPhone 8. There's only been 4 models since. There's more computing power in this than there was in the space shuttle. Much more, actually. That fact actually goes back, I think, the iPhone 6. There's more computing power right here, literally in the palm of my hand, than there was in the space shuttle. And I can look up all of the information in all of the sum total of recorded human history right here. Government does work, but it requires the right people and the right funding. And those people have to have the right intentions. So it works. It does work. Why do the largest corporations and the richest among us try to destroy government? Because it is the one institution that we have endowed with the power to restrain them, the power to lift all the rest of us up and restrain them. And if we break that, they are completely unrestrained. And that's why they want to own it. Why does the Republican Party that supposedly believes in small government, no regulation, complete free market, unrestrained capitalism, tells you the government doesn't work, can't do anything for you, total privatization, a government that literally can do nothing for you and that should barely even exist except for small things like defense. Why do they want to control it so bad? Why would they crawl over a pile of dead bodies to hold every single office that government exists for?
Well, it's called a revolving door.
If it's so worthless, why must they control every aspect of it? Ever asked yourself that one?
It's crony capitalism, Jeff. That's how Vice President Cheney got to be CEO of Halliburton. He spent years working in positions in government, being the Secretary of Defense.
And then saved it. And then continued to take a check from it while the whole time he was vice president, and then saved Halliburton and made it one of the largest corporations on the planet.
Exactly. That's why they want those positions. It's crony capitalism.
Graham, it's almost 8 p.m. Eastern time here in the United States. I'm going to release you back to your Sunday evening. But before I do so, and then I'm going to wrap up here on my own a little bit after 8 o'clock. But before I let you go, I want to give you just a free open floor, no questions, no nothing, and just say, if there's anything that any points, any issues, any facts, any figures, anything that we may have missed, not been able to touch on, that we did not talk about enough, anything that we may have missed. And then, of course, how do people reach you? How do they reach the campaign? How might they volunteer, donate? How do we continue to follow? If you are able to have any debates, forums, etc. So I just very open the floor, points, issues, anything that we may have missed that you really wanted to cover, and then contact info, everything. Just go for it. The floor is yours.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, first and foremost, I'd like to thank you, Jeff, for having me on. It's always a pleasure. I had a great time last time, and I had a great time tonight. Thank you for setting this all up and doing this. It's really a great avenue and venue for people to get to know us and learn our policies. I think in terms of the policies, we went over a good deal of them tonight, and I think people will understand exactly who I am and what I stand for. But one of the things, if I could leave anybody watching with, and I cannot stress this more, is get out and vote. Doesn't matter if you're an independent, a Republican, a Democrat, Libertarian, it does not matter. It doesn't matter if you want to vote for me or not. Make sure your voice is heard. If you want change in government, get out and vote. And, I'll do my best to show you my platform and who I am and what I stand for. And hopefully you'll see it and think that it's the direction our state and our country needs to move in and push towards that direction. I mean, I'm for pushing us to prosperity out of this pandemic, universal healthcare coverage, workers' rights, raising the minimum wage, large infrastructure project investments that deal with climate change in order to get our state back to work, and eliminating a property tax. They're very simple ideas, but I believe that our government can alleviate the pain points that our communities face. I want to make sure that you guys have a representative that you can trust, somebody who will be there for you, and somebody that you can reach out to and interact with. I will be somebody who's very active in our community that you can always raise your concerns to, and I will address them. And to keep up with our campaign, you can go to Graham Gonzales 4pa.com, our website, and you can see everything there. You can go to Graham 4pa on Facebook, and we'll be posting updates there as well. Or honestly, you can email me at grahamforpennsylvania@gmail.com, and I'll respond to you. Whatever you need, whether you have a policy question, you want to learn a little bit more about me, you want materials, it doesn't matter. We'll get back to you.
Grant, well, look at you. What a pro. What a pro. I might have to give you this mic. That was right at 8 o'clock. What a professional.
That's what the business world does to you.
That's what doing too many Zooms probably does to you.
Yeah.
You've become a Zoom professional. Well, listen, thank you. Thank you for being here. This, twice now. I think you might be the first. No, Connor beat you to it. You're the second double visitor. So thank you for being here again. I appreciate you taking so much time. I mean, 3 hours on a Sunday evening, which is still, traditionally family time here in the good old US. I appreciate you being here very, very much. I hope you had a great time. I hope you enjoyed it. And, as you have proven, the door is always open to you. We wish you the absolute best of luck in the campaign. Press that incumbent for a debate or a forum. We will watch it. When we find out about it, we will keep visiting the website. We will watch it, and we want to wish you the best of luck. And of course, above all else, stay safe, stay healthy, stay safe, and keep us up to date on what's happening. Come back and visit us again.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jeff. Have a great rest of your Sunday.
Thanks so much, Graham. That is Graham Gonzales, the Democratic nominee and candidate for the Pennsylvania State House of Representatives in the 5th District, which is inside, almost, in fact, all inside Berks County, because sometimes if I don't say it clearly, it sounds like Bucks. It's Berks County, the Reading area, although not the actual city of Reading, because that district was drawn perfectly. It was designed very, very well to stay in red hands. The phone line remains open, 267-227-9189, 267-227-9189. Again, we have no calls, so I am going to just ramble through a couple of different things here. It was an odd night because I had an odd beginning to the program. There's been a Facebook redesign, and when I tried to log into Facebook, the whole screen that tells me to share and title things and where to click and all that stuff was in all different places. And I got really thrown off by it. And I've actually not quite recovered from it. Still, even after 3 hours, I've actually not quite recovered from it. So I definitely have been a little bit off tonight. So I apologize to any of you if you are wondering what the heck is wrong with me. I'm actually quite fine. I just have been a little bit thrown off through the whole thing. So I apologize for that. In fact, again, as I look to my right, oh, now I'm clear for some reason. So everything's just been a little bit off. I can't explain it. I do think it's a Facebook thing. But it's just a bit strange. And then the screen that I monitor with, Facebook redesigned that for me. I didn't ask for that, and now that's all different, and I don't like it. And I hope that I can somehow figure out how to design it back the way I wanted it. I'll have to play with that, and I imagine poor George and I will be dealing with that during the week. We'll probably be up late some night in a goofy mood, and we'll be dealing with that. And again, I actually want to say, while I'm still on the air, and I want to very much intentionally do it while I'm on the air, I need to thank George Dare. George is my good friend. I've known George for probably 20 years now. It's hard to believe sometimes that we've known each other that long, but when I try to trace it back to when I've known him and when I met him, it's probably 20 years. And he is an IT professional, among many other things. I will let him come on some night and explain everything else that he does. He also makes models and props for motion pictures. But he is an IT professional. And when I started the program, he called me and said, I am volunteering myself as your IT person and engineer. I said, well, okay, but you haven't done radio and I didn't ask you and I can't pay you. And he said, that's okay. I don't care. I'm doing it. And so we've been doing it. We've been getting through it. And, he has helped me a lot these last 2 weeks to get the YouTube channel cleaned up, a little more information on there so that when you click on different things, the information is there for you. He's been getting the programs, the recorded programs, because we can't stream live to multiple places at the same time, although we're working on that as well. We can't do that without like a really expensive subscription, and that's just not in the budget at the moment, but it's a whole other story. But he's been getting the programs loaded onto these different platforms for me. So he's got the YouTube channel all cleaned up. We think we have the Instagram ready. I hope I'm not early with that, George. But he's been helping me a lot, and I'm beyond grateful. I'm very blessed. human being. I have good people. I have good people in my life. April, whom I would not be sitting here without April, um, DJ Lex and DJ Earl, who helped me get on to 101. April, who helped me get to them to get me on 101 and get me started straight from the get-go. And then George, who's helped me get the Mac set up and help me figure out the monitoring point of view and get even the mic and the headset working and the mixing board and all that. I wouldn't be anywhere without any of them. And I am not always the most grateful person because I'm Irish and I have a hell of a temper. But I'm not always as grateful as I should be, but they are great human beings. They're not just great radio people. They're not just great people that help me with this program. They're great people, period, stop. And I just should say that I'm very grateful. So the program is now pretty well proliferated over a lot of different places. So again, we have now, I usually do this at the top of the hour anyway, and since it's 8:00, what the heck time is it? 8:04, 8:06 Eastern time. We have about 50 plus different places that we share over Facebook, either live or recorded. We have our brothers and sisters and family at hot101.net, and I am very proud to be part of the hot101.net family. I truly am. I'm not just saying that. I really, honestly am. It means the world to me. It's a real achievement. I'm very proud of it, and I appreciate it. And now we have the YouTube channel, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And hey, we got to be doing something. We're just here knocking it out. We're just doing what we can. We're having a conversation. We have good quality people on the program from both sides of the aisle. And we're proud to be here. We're proud that you're listening, because if you weren't listening, we wouldn't be here. If you weren't watching, we wouldn't be here, but you are. The numbers tell us that you're there. So we're proud of that. So let me just say to you what's coming up. Next week, I believe Patty Smith will be joining us. Michelle Siegel will be joining us. I think the week after that, trying to get to Shanna Danielson. But we're looking at, the goal is candidates all the way up through Election Day. And the Sunday after Election Day, I am trying to put together a round table discussion that would be multiple guests, and to just break down the election itself. What did everyone think? What did the election tell us? Not so much heavy statistics and data analytics and so on, even though I could very much do that. It's part of what I do. But more so, what do those numbers kind of tell us? What did we learn from the election? And that would be with folks from both parties would be my goal. I do know who I can ask from the right side of the aisle, the Republican side of the aisle, who I believe would join us. And I would like to have people from both sides of the aisle and have a civil, friendly discussion. And let's stay friendly. I know the people that would keep it friendly. I'd like to have a civil, friendly discussion, people from both sides of the aisle, to discuss, the results of the election and what it meant to them. What did they think happened? What were the, not just what the results were, who won and who lost, but why, and what it means to you, and, where we think we're headed as a country. I would like to do that the Sunday after Election Day, which would be, he is quickly accessing his calendar. So Tuesday, that would be Sunday the 8th. So we have candidates. We're looking at Patty Smith on the 11th. I believe Michelle will be with us on perhaps the 18th, trying to get to Shanna Danielson. So I only have 2 more Sundays to fill, either the 25th or November 1st, and then hopefully the roundtable on the 8th. After that, It's authors and historians, and we're going to try to, kind of get out of the politics a little bit after that before we get back into it. Politics doesn't end. Politics does not end with elections. It merely intensifies with elections, but the politics itself never ends. And for those of you here in the Commonwealth, you will know that there are elections every single year, twice a year, primaries and generals, twice a year. The odd years, as we move into 2021, you'll be looking at local races, judge races, township, mayors and councils, and possibly some county races, in these odd years, the odd ending years, 21, 23, 25. And then boom, before you know it, and believe me, it will go fast. You're right into 2022, where in the Commonwealth, you're looking at a senatorial race, you're looking at a governor and, PA State House again, and senates and so on like that. So it never ends. It just keeps going. It just keeps happening. So, and that doesn't stop. But, after Election Day, we want to move into stuff. I have some names of some pastors and reverends that I want to talk about. The state of religion in the country, state of religion in the area, state of religion in politics, the role that religion has taken in politics, a never increasing role, by the way. And there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot of things to talk about, but we do want to take a little break from politics after the election. But we're looking at candidates from now to Election Day. And then on the Sunday after Election Day, we'll try to break it all down for you. There is a possibility of some special live episodes coming up, not on Sundays, possibly some post-debate, considered post-debate after the circus that was the first debate. It was interesting. I had some friends, and even April herself, get to me and say, "Are you going to go live after this debate?" And I thought no, and because I thought that as much as our program has grown, and as much as I appreciate all of you for it, I kind of thought that we would get a bit lost in the shuffle of all of the national and international coverage for the very first debate. And, I have to say, I think I was probably right, because that was just a circus. It was an absolute proper circus. And I'm kind of glad I did not try to go on the air live after that, because I'm not so sure what I'm not so sure what I would have said about it beyond what I am going to say to you now. It is my estimation, it is my opinion, that the current occupant, that Trump wanted to make the first 10 to 15 to 20 minutes of that quote unquote debate so miserable, so ugly, so childish, that you wanted to turn it off and not watch it. I do this for a living, and I wanted to turn it off. In fact, I did turn it off. Now, the Yankees were in a playoff game, so I was kind of flipping back and forth between that and the Yankee playoff game, to be perfectly honest with you. So I was back and forth when in between innings and commercials and so on. But now 60-something million people tuned into the debate, which was a low number to start with. Generally, debate audiences can be estimated in the 100 million range. This was about 65 million. So that was low already to start with. But my professional political point of view is that Trump wanted to make that debate so miserable and so much of a childish little circus that you, the viewer, you, the voter, would be so disgusted with it that you would turn it off and never turn it back on. Why would he do that? Well, because he had nothing to offer and nothing to say. No policies to offer, no vision to offer, nothing to offer. So that's my view of it. So if you have nothing to say, but you have to stand there for 90 minutes, at least I can get everybody to turn it off, and then no one will see it. I can drive down the ratings and no one will see it. And it is my particular point of view that that is what the goal was. I could very well be wrong. But I know that I am not alone in that analysis. That is an analysis that many folks who make a hell of a lot more money than me have provided on media outlets a hell of a lot larger than this. No vision, no facts, no data, no science, no history, no programs, no record that you would ever want to run or campaign on. So poison the waters, watch the clock, run out the time, and run away. And that's basically what it was. It's pretty much all it was. So that's pretty much all I can offer you about it. Yes, there was a couple little, Mr. Biden telling him to shut up, Mr. Biden getting emotional about his son. I get it. There's a couple little highlights in there, but there's not much to say about it. It was childish. It was ugly. It was something that no one should want to watch. But that was the plan. We tend to think of debates as presidential happenings. There are going to be dozens of debates that you could watch. I encourage you to watch as many as possible. And I mean that. I really mean that. For me, personally, there will be, or they're scheduled to be, the remaining 2 presidential debates. There's supposed to be a vice presidential debate. For my U.S. House of Representative seat, there's supposed to be, I believe, 4 of those. My PA State House Rep seat, I believe they have agreed to at least 1. I'm hoping to watch that. The candidates that I work with are all scheduled to be in debates. I will watch those. I encourage you, wherever you're listening, whether you are inside Pennsylvania, outside Pennsylvania, even if it is not election season in any of the nations around the globe where you are listening, be engaged. Listen, not to the U.S. debates. If you're in Australia and you don't care about what's happening in the election cycle in the U.S., first off, you should. Because we still have quite a stockpile of nuclear weapons and a huge military. Other than that, we are irrelevant as a nation. We've become literally irrelevant as a nation. But we got a lot of nuclear weapons and a big military. And it's the only thing that keeps us relevant. So that said, you might want to keep a passive ear on what's happening here. But wherever you are in the country, debates are not just presidential. You have your House, U.S. House candidates should be debating. There are Senate seats, United States Senate seats that are going to be having debates. You have your local legislative races. There might be mayoral races. There might be council. All of these offices, all of them should be having some type of forum or debate or public question time or something where the two candidates or three candidates, whoever candidates, should be in a room in this somewhere in some kind of same place, even if it's on a screen, taking questions for you to watch and listen to and gauge whom you want to vote for if you have not voted already. I got my mail-in ballot. First off, I'm stunned I got my mail-in ballot, but I got it. So I have to fill that out. I still have not voted. I will, and I will hand deliver it to a drop box. But if you have not voted yet, you watch these debates. Inform yourself. I say it every week. I am a member of the Democratic Party. My party is not perfect. I do not agree with the corporate wing of my party, with the centrist wing of my party. I believe my party must return to its roots, to its Franklin Roosevelt, Truman, John F. Kennedy, Lyndon Johnson roots. It must. That's who we are, not the 90s. But it's also the only party that's even trying. And that is how I will vote. But even if you do not agree with that, watch the debates, read the news, be informed, then make your decision and vote. That vote is yours. Generations fought for it. Don't throw it away. Do not use it. Use it. If you are not part of the richest 1% and you vote for Trump, I think you're nuts. If you vote for any Republican, I think you're nuts. But it's your right to do it. And you should use that right. No matter what. Don't let them take it from you. If the Republican Party thought your vote was so damn worthless, they wouldn't be trying to strip it from you every chance they get. No, I don't think that's how you should vote. And I'll try to convince you not to vote that way. On economic reasons. Not on social reasons, not on religious reasons, but on economic reasons. But if you think I'm wrong and you decide to vote that way anyway, then God bless you. I'm glad you voted. There's one other thing I want to relay to you. It's 8:24 here Eastern time. And hey, what a shocker. Nobody called. 267-227-9189. 267-227-9189. I was in Harrisburg yesterday. And that means I drove from the Lehigh Valley to Harrisburg and back. Every single road sign that I passed, placed by PennDOT, Pennsylvania Department of Transportation, PennDOT, the electric signs that have words on them that can tell you things like, slow down, construction zone, things like that. They all had a very interesting message. And it is a message that I have been giving you since the spring, I believe. Since April would sit here and remind me to make sure that I reminded you until it became second nature, and now I remember each week. The signs would say, support PA transportation funding, fill out the census. The Trump regime went to court to close down U.S. Census data collection. A federal court told them, no, you will not. You will continue to collect this information. And then the regime said, we're going to close it down anyway. We're going to ignore the court. Isn't it interesting how the Republican Party wants to pack the court full of judges, but then will just ignore it when they see fit? To the best of my knowledge, they are still collecting data, census data. I believe there are groups who have gone to court to make sure that they do not ignore the court. Now, why they should have to do that is beyond me. But that said, for God's sakes, folks, fill out the census. I cannot figure under what circumstances it would take you more than 10 minutes. And that's if you do it by hand on paper. It might take you 10 minutes. I can remember back in the dark ages when we wrote on stone tablets. I'm kidding, of course. But I mean, back when I was maybe 18 or 20, I might have been younger because I think I sat and did it with my parents. It was a big, huge form. I mean, we unfolded it and it took up the whole table. That one might have took us an hour because they asked all sorts of questions. But I did mine online, and I'm telling you, 3 to 5 minutes, I think it took me at the most. So fill out the census. We're talking about transportation funding, school funding, Meals on Wheels funding, senior programs, after school programs. When we talk about transportation funding, we're not just talking about paving roads. We're talking about stoplights and stop signs and crosswalks and, new exits and entrances off of interstates and U.S. highways and entirely new bypasses and cutoffs and exits and entrances and sometimes entirely new highways and rail lines and high-speed rails and light rail and bus stops and buses. And we're talking about this is how these things are determined. And in Pennsylvania, we're actually facing the real possibility of losing a member of the House of Representatives. And if you're in a different state listening to us, if you're in a state like Colorado or Florida or Arizona, you might be talking about gaining a member of the House of Representatives. Fill out the census. Do it, do it, do it. No excuses. Do it. Do it online. Go to DuckDuckGo or Google and just type U.S. Census. You will easily find out how to fill it in. Graham and I discussed Citizens United. If you do not believe in Citizens United, if you believe that corporations are not people and that money is not speech, I encourage you to go to a website called Move to Amend. www.movetoamend.org. You can sign a petition there where you will affirm the belief that corporations are not people and that money is not speech. You can donate to them too because they are in court trying to do exactly that. They're also encouraging states to adopt such a resolution, and they're actually trying to get that enshrined in the U.S. Constitution, that corporations are not people. The idea that corporations are people and that money is equal to speech is literally made up law by the Supreme Court itself. Doesn't say that anywhere in the Constitution. It is made up law. Republicans love to scream about activist judges. Well, they seem to love it when they do what they want. They love judges that do what they want. Well, they did it here. They made up law. You know, it's funny in the abortion debate. I know I'm really sticking my toe into the pool here, but they scream that in the Roe versus Wade decision, judges made law out of thin air. And they did, by the way. But they didn't like the decision, so they scream about it. Well, guess what? In Citizens United, they made law out of thin air. They determined that corporations were people and that money is speech. Well, I am not a constitutional scholar, not by any means, and I do not play one on TV. But if we all have a First Amendment right to free speech, it would seem to me that that speech should be equal. Because we also know that the Supreme Court, that's separate, does not mean equal. Well, wealth inequality has certainly separated us. So if one guy is worth $200 billion and the rest of us obviously are not, then how can that free speech be equal? It can't be. It means that one guy can buy all the speech. It means that his speech is a hell of a lot more free. And I don't mean free monetarily, but free, wink, wink, free speech than ours is, because he gets to buy all of it. That's why corporations can't be people. And that's why money can't be free speech. Because if you have all the money, you get to buy all the speech. And if you believe as I do, that those two things can't go together, then go to move to amend and sign the petition. What else have I forgotten that I wanted to mention to you this week? Oh, let me just say, I did have a question in the chat. What name do we search to find the show and so on these other platforms? Okay, the YouTube channel. Boy, I wish George was where I could find him. The Instagram is Jeff Kennedy. The YouTube channel, I believe, is That Other Side of Information. The LinkedIn is Jeff Kennedy. And I hope I got that right, because I am pretty much ready to sign off, and George will probably correct me after I'm off the air. But I can also put that information on the Facebook group page. And I also meant what I said, folks. I encourage you all the time to share the program and share the group page and invite folks to the group page. We do have membership questions at the Facebook group page. However, it's not rocket science. It's basically just, do you agree that you're not going to, swear, get ugly and put, graphic, disgusting pictures up of, animal slaughter and things like that up there, and you're going to be respectful and so on. I've posted stuff up there from the Republican pages and things, and the folks from Restore Lehigh County have posted on That Other Side of Information. So all the membership questions are just, are you going to be respectful? Are you going to be, are we going to have a discussion here? And as soon as we start screaming, I shut it down. I have to admit, I do edit the page, but it's just to keep it. It's a family show. We don't cuss and swear here. Kids, people who are not full-fledged adults listen to this program, and I try to keep the page the same way. But that doesn't mean that we're not taking members. I would love to. I think we're just under 700 members now. I'd love to see it 1,000. I'd like to see it 10,000. But yeah, we're going to keep a little bit of standard there. It's not going to be a free for all. So yes. So again, you can get the program on anywhere that I have shared it. Again, there's like 50 groups. I can't name them all. Wherever it is that you have watched it live or on the recording, I'm just grateful. And I mean that sincerely. I'm just grateful. And to all the administrators of all those different pages who continue to share the show to their pages. Some are inconsistent. They do it some weeks and not others. Obviously, I would love if they did it every single week. I'm just glad when they do it. I appreciate every time that they do it. I just thank you. If you forget one week, or they do it on the recording and they might not approve it until Tuesday or whatever, look, I'm just happy that you do it. I'm glad that you do it. I appreciate that you do it. Please know that. Don't think that I'm not. I appreciate it very, very, very much. To my brothers and sisters so you can always find the show there. Again, it's the Hot 101 Facebook page, of course. I Thrive community. Let's Build a New Allentown. Grit Group, the Our Revolution Pennsylvania, and Our Revolution National, the Easton Democratic Committee, the Bethlehem City Democratic Committee, Turn PA Blue, Our Future Central PA, Our Future Western PA, Our Future Northeastern PA, the Lehigh Valley Progressive Network, Pennsylvania Democratic Politics. I can't even name all of them. There's like 50 different pages now, and we are just honored and humbled and happy that you're doing it. We really, really appreciate it. We truly, truly do. Our sisters and brothers at hot101.net for the audio portion of the program, he tried to say, now he's getting tired. The audio portion of the program, DJ Lex and DJ Earl, who got the technology for me, the programming and so on to get on the air, and of course my friend who also is part of the structure, the management structure, the structure there at hot101.net, my dear friend, my part-time psychiatrist, partner, producer, everything, April Riddick, who got me onto hot101.net. Of course, we love her dearly, and we thank all of them, everybody at hot101.net. I know I said it a myriad of times during the program. If you have not been to their new website page, go visit it. Really looks great. It really honestly does. It looks great. It's very, very simple to navigate. It's a very simple page, and I don't mean simple as in like, silly simple. I mean just simple to use. Very easy to click and move about and use. It's very easy. It looks great. It's a very simple page to use, very friendly to use. Go check it out. And of course, you can get the apps for that. We're thrilled to be on hot101.net. And you can now, of course, find the program. Again, it's Jeff Kennedy on Instagram. It is Jeff Kennedy on LinkedIn. And if you go to YouTube and search That Other Side of Information, you should find the program. We're all over the place. We're out there. We're just happy that you are watching. And again, if you have a product or a service, a business, something that you want to advertise, please keep that in mind. We're everywhere. We're everywhere. We're all over Facebook. The audio portion literally goes around the globe, and recorded versions of the program are all over Facebook, and they are all over Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So if I read your advertisement, it lives on in perpetuity on this program. So no phone calls. You lose, folks. If you were going to call, you have lost your opportunity, because I'm about ready to say goodnight. My voice is starting to go. I am getting a pounding headache for some reason, and it's just time for me to say goodnight. So that's the plan. Patty Smith, Michelle Siegel coming up in the next few weeks, possibly Shanna Danielson and some other candidates. We're looking for a roundtable on November 8th after the election. Also a special, possibly some special mid-week episodes following debates, and a special Latino Latinx election episode coming up about Latinx, all about Latinx issues. I wish April was here. We could have gotten into that and explained that a little bit more, but we'll be coming with you for that. So just exciting times here at the Kennedy Effect, and the show rolls on, he tried to say. I'm now, all the words are starting to now mold together into one big indescribable word. So that is my body telling me to shut up and say goodnight to you all now. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to sign off and say goodnight to you and wish you all a wonderful, wonderful week. And we will return to you next week. So let me just say again, please, please, please fill out the census. Fill out the census before it gets shut down and before you cannot fill it out. Please fill it out. Please, if you are in a vote by mail state or a vote by mail state or in a vote early state, early voting state, please go vote. Watch the debates, read news, online newspaper, however you take in your news, and then vote. And again, last but not least, please don't argue. Don't fight. Don't yell. Don't scream. Talk to each other. We can heal this nation. And we will not fix any of the deep problems that we do have in this country if we do not talk to each other first. I am a proud member of the Democratic Party, but my friends who are Republicans are not bad people. I might believe that they are wrong on the issues. In fact, I do believe that they are wrong on the issues, but they're not bad people. I just happen to have a different philosophy. Folks who have darker colored skin than mine, which is just about everybody, are not bad people. They just look a little different. They want the same things I do. They want to be financially secure. They want their families to be happy and healthy. They want a shot at the American dream. We just need to talk to each other again. That's all. It all starts from there. Let us just talk to each other again. Not yell and scream. Not throw punches. Not shoot. But talk. We can disagree. We can disagree. But if we just lower the tone, we could accomplish so much more. So I beg you to do that. I do. I actually beg you to do that. If you have senior citizens who are neighbors and friends, check on them. Because even though economies and towns and cities and states and so on have quote unquote opened up from the virus, there are still folks who cannot come out. They are immunocompromised. I have asthma. They still have to worry about catching this virus. Please check on your friends and neighbors, especially your senior friends and neighbors and family, or someone who is immunocompromised and has to very, very much worry still about catching this virus. Check on them. Get them groceries, bring them a meal, or let them come out onto their front or back porch and you sit at 10, 12 feet away and have a conversation. Visit them. Give them some company. Let's take care of one another. We can do this. Yes, we have deep divisions in the country. We do. And it's sad. But let's keep those divisions at policy divisions, at differences on how we want to solve these different political and policy divisions. Let them not every disagreement must be personal. We can fix this country. I believe it. I believe it. I do. I believe it with all my heart. We have a lot of work to do. There are a lot of serious wounds that need healing, wounds that were fostered and developed purposefully for political gain, but we can fix them. I believe that. So let me leave you with that rather lengthy ending as I usually do. My endings tend to get rather lengthy. But let me leave you with that one. So, folks, good night. Please take care of yourselves and each other. And we will see you next week on The Kennedy Effect. We will return next Sunday. 7 and 4 is 11. Yes. He checks the calendar again. Yes. 4 and 7 is 11. That would be 11 October. We will see you next week on The Kennedy Effect. Please take care of yourselves and each other. Until October 11th, this is Jeff Kennedy signing off. Please take care of each other. We'll see you then.